Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the NXTGEN Racing GT3 League Season 4, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round number 3 of 8 as we remain in Japan and conclude our doubleheader at the infamous Suzuka International Racing Course. Known more commonly as Suzuka and iconic for its figure of 8 layout, this circuit was originally designed in 1962 as a test circuit for Honda, but when it was unleashed onto the world, it has very quickly become a staple of major international racing calendars. Indeed, Formula 1 has seen most of its Japanese Grand Prix held here, and in the space of 5 years when it was not, it's held at neighbouring Fuji, which is where we were 2 weeks ago. But the key point being about this circuit, its iconic 4 sectors, 17 corners, and every aspect of a car being tested, and the same could be said for the drive behind the car. This is a circuit which draws crowds and drivers like no other across the Asian continent. Indeed, many drivers absolutely love it, and spectators do so as well. And over the years, this circuit has grown, it's been refined, and it has been fine-tuned into the ultimate racing circuit that we see today. And well, John Hugenholtz will be absolutely proud when he designed it back in 1962 to just see how far the circuit has come and how it continues to grow with each and every year of motorsport in history. But as we get ready to go racing today, the stage is set for our first endurance race round of the season. And as you can see there, times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1 at UTC +1. We have one item on our calendar for today, and that is the endurance race. 120 minutes of racing action, and it's all due to kick off in what is just shy of 13 minutes time. Now, as we get ready to go racing, we welcome you all to this broadcast, being brought to you live via 3 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, you may be tuning in by one of the 2 official NXTGEN Racing media channels, whether it be on YouTube at youtube.com, search for NXTGEN Racing, alternatively facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing there. We say hello to you guys and girls tuning in via YouTube, alternatively Facebook. And for those of you tuning in via the third alternative media platform, you may be tuning in via twitch.tv/TX141. And to the guys and girls tuning in via Twitch, hello to you there as well. And we hope you're all set and ready to go racing today, as we are here in the commentary booth, and all the racing action is covered by myself in the commentary booth. Allow me to introduce myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. But as we get set here, the clouds are over the Suzuka circuit. No rain in the forecast, thankfully, but we do have an ambient temperature of 18 degrees centigrade and a track temperature of 22 degrees centigrade, so it's a relatively cool day here in Japan. We've got plenty to look forward to, but before we get onto our circuit specifically, let's give you a reminder of the season so far and what is still to come. As we can see, we started all the way back on the 28th of June 2023 in the United States of America at the Sebring International Raceway. Then in the state of Florida, we got off to an absolute cracker of a start with plenty of battling up and down the field in the gold, silver and bronze classes. Then that was in our first sprint and feature combination. And then round 2 last time out on the 12th of July, we made our way to Japan for the first part of the Japanese doubleheader. Then the sprint and feature combination at the Fuji International Speedway, we got to see plenty of battling action down the extended start for this straight and also through the sweeping corners and the tight technical turns that concluded the lap, and many a driver really stood out. Perhaps the one that stood out the most, however, was in the gold class, Stephan Wessels, who after a difficult day at Sebring really turned things around at Fuji and is looking to continue to do so. But now it's the 26th of July and we're here at the Suzuka circuit for our first endurance race round of 3 of them, and we'll see the latter ones come up later on in the season. And in 2 weeks from now we'll make our way back to the United States of America for Road America, going to the Wisconsin State Circuit and the picturesque Elkhart Lake course. We're playing host to our drivers in another sprint and feature combo. That'll be on the 9th of August. And then 2 weeks afterwards, we make our way to Germany for a limited number of visits to the European continent. But then on the 23rd of August, our drivers will be required to take on the Nürburgring Combined, also known as the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke 24-hour endurance layout. And well, what a circuit it is, and indeed a legendary circuit. You only need to utter the words Nürburgring, and everybody knows what you're referring to when it comes to the green hell. And we'll get to see our drivers to go through hell and back as they make their way into round number 5 4 weeks from now. And then after that, 2 weeks later, in round number 6 of 8, we'll see our drivers make their way to the United Kingdom for the one and only Silverstone Grand Prix circuit in the sprint and feature combination on the 6th of September, after which then the penultimate round we make our way to Canada, back to North American continent on the 13th of September for the Motorsport circuit, also known as the Canadian Time Motorsports Park in Fall. And then we bring it all to a close after our final sprint and feature round, well, final endurance race round, and that'll be on the 20th of September, and where it's only appropriate that we host our final round of the season, particularly when it's the endurance round of the Ultimate Endurance Racing Circuit. And well, we all know and love it. It's located in France. It's the Circuit de la Sarthe, or the Circuit des 24 de Mans, or you all know and love it and refer to it as Le Mans. And we bring the curtain down on the 20th of September on the French soil. But as we look to head now to today's racing, let's give you a recap how the championship stand after 2 rounds of racing. And we started with the Gold Drivers' Championship here, and we can see Stephan Wessels leading the way after an absolutely scintillating pole position at Fuji, and with it the fastest lap in the sprint race. Now on 71 points versus Gavan Gardener's 58, and that 13-point gap, whilst it may not seem large, it's very telling in terms of how the momentum has shifted in the favour of the CSA racing driver. However, Gavan Gardener stays in P2, and with his consistency in his outright performance, that could go in good stead today, given the fact that this endurance race round will be more about consistency as well as outright pace, but we'll have to wait to see how it plays out for the Briton. With Matt Shorter in P3 moving into 3rd place, ahead of brother Chris Shorter. You can see they're further down the order, and on 53 points, he's 5 behind 2nd place and 5 clear Akram Zanoum. Akram Zanoum really flying high in the feature race, setting the fastest lap in the end, and on 48 points, having a bit of misfortune in the first 2 rounds and looking to try and put that to bed. And indeed, could he find that momentum today to make his way into the top 3, or will he find himself being hotly contested by Jonathan Cook, the Performance Link Esports driver there in P5 on 43 points, continuing to find himself battling for top 5 finishes, if not the podium. And we'll have the opportunity to catch up with Cook going into tonight, and he was telling me that he's expected to try and target a consistent finish inside the top 5, but the podium may be outside of his reach. Adam Delman in P6 on 38 points continues to strive to get into the top 5, but he's being closed in by Chris T. Shorter, who was not in attendance last time out due to ill health, but I'm happy to say that he is gradually on the recovery, and indeed he's back on the circuit today. And on 37 points, there's 1 clear of Victor Chamorro, who is in P8 right now, 1 point clear of Miguel Gutierrez Garcia, and as Gianni Tahoe completes the top 10. 3 points over the top 10, Benjamin McCluskey in at P11 looks to continue to try and break his way into the top 10, but misfortune so far has plagued him significantly. And you have Jan Crack, Jamie Dorian, and Gaz Williams, or Gareth Williams is known for, completing the standings there, when minus 50-point car change for Gaz Williams. He has changed car. Indeed, today you're going to see him in the Porsche 992. Now coming on to the silver class, we can see it's Russell Fowler who leads the way by a single point at the moment, and indeed the top 3 separated by only 3 points. Fowler versus Sergio Gonzalez Martin and Tristan Engelstad, all an absolutely brilliant trio of drivers battling hard, and we saw plenty of battling action between the trio last time out at Fuji. But whereas Russell Fowler has been 1 step ahead so far, he's going to need to keep doing the dance if he wants to stay clear, with Martin and Engelstad both on his case and both picking up some major points last time out. Lee Horns a further 7 points behind in P4, and with that now started to break away from the rest of the field and trying to give himself an outside opportunity to sneak into the top 3, or at least keep the top 3 honest. Well, Alfonso F. Marin in P5 on 46 points, only ahead of Ben Bennyworth and Matthew Addy based on result count back, with all 3 drivers there on 46 points apiece, and Paul Scott a further point behind in P8. And David Camano in P9 on 38 points, 2 clear of Stefan Albanese, and that completes your top 10. And then we can see Nesta De La Fuente and Jack Barker complete your standings in P11 at P12. We do apologise for the mispronouncement information there on the screen, but we should only have 12 drivers and not a grand total of 14. But then as we come on to our bronze class, we can see there Jordan Baybois leading the way by 11 points currently over Daniel Fritz. And Baybois having a difficult round number 1, but a completely different story in round number 2. And indeed, Baybois the man to beat, it would seem, and now right on course to charge on through in the GT3 bronze category. Now, meanwhile, Daniel Fritz trying to keep him honest as best he possibly can, and with Sean Scudder taking pole position at Fuji, the question was, where did all the pace go in the 2 races for the South African driver? It wasn't quite there compared to Baybois, but to be fair, also Baybois having some fortune on his side in terms of avoiding instant. Scudder, however, finding himself in the deep end of some rather nasty bumps and bruises. But with that, it does mean we've seen quite a sizable swing at the top, and could we see the swing go the other way today? Will the likes of Nigel Stott and Craig Tillotson find their way into the top 3, given the fact the battle for P3 is only separated by 5 points between the 3 drivers of Scudder, Stott and Tillotson, with then Davide Fava a further 8 points behind in P6. Alexander Rogenbach is in P7, only ahead of Elwin Sykes based on result countback, with Mark Sykes and Jorge Santos completing your top 10. And then P11 best of it's Wesley Lewin on 29 points, 10 clear of John Meredith, with Josh Brown completing the standings. And then come on to the Teams Championship last but not least, and here we can see Chris Shorter Academy Ping lead the way, only on result countback, currently ahead of Performance Link Esports. It's dead level between the 2 teams, and that goes to show what they've been bringing to the table round after round, and well, who's going to get the advantage over the other this time round? That's the question. But Crest Autosport well a further 7 points behind, and keeping right in the hunt there with Kevin Motorsport Yellow and Chris Shorter Academy Blue also on their heels inside the top 5. Outside the top 5, only by 3 points, Quad Dash Racing in P6. They're 1 point clear of Chris Shorter Academy Green, with then a 10-point advantage to Next Gen Team Red, with Kevin Motorsport Red and Next Gen Team Purple completing your top 10. And then we do have a sizable 18-point gap to P11 Best Rest Next Gen Racing Team Pink, who in turn are 11 points clear of FR20 Sim Racing, and Meredith Racing complete your Team's Championship standings. Now, coming on to our circuit for today, we talked about it earlier, but let's give it a full and proper introduction. It's the Suzuka International Racing Course, and the Grand Prix layout will be playing host to our drivers. Now, we're located near the city of Suzuka in the Mie Prefecture of Japan. This is a circuit which brings together the very best elements when we go road racing. For the simple reason, this was designed as a test circuit, and therefore the aim of this circuit is to put every aspect of a car's performance and a driver's performance to the ultimate test. And you can see that via the circuit map provided us by iRacing.com. Thank you to them for their wonderful simulator and the track maps that come with it. Well, the fact, as the lap goes on, the average apex speed of the lap starts to increase significantly, with the first 2 sectors all being about direction change and medium speed handling. We see that as our drivers charge away across the start finish straight and down towards turn 1. Once they make their way through turns 1 and 2, it's a trail braking right-hander followed up by a much severer right-hander of turn number 2, and as they come out of turn 2, they'll make their way up through the winding S's. Through the left into right of turns 3 and 4, they'll find there's an elevation change that begins to become more pronounced as well, as they ascend towards the apex of turn 5 and then the very low speed apex of turn number 6. Deceptive, and they need to avoid the understeer, but get it right, they'll then swing the car into turn number 7 to complete the first sector and move on. Coming through turn number 7, it's all about returning to full throttle as soon as possible as our drivers charge away through the long curve up towards the Degners of turns 8 and 9. Degner 1, a fast right-hander. Degner 2, a much more gradual and slow right-hander by comparison. And then it's also about seeing how a car handles over the curves. We've got very pronounced curves over both of the corner apexes, and we'll hit those curves at the wrong angle, and you may find yourself in the gravel, if not the barrier. But going through turn number 9, our drivers will make their way underneath the overhead, which gives way to the iconic figure of 8 layout, and they'll make their way up towards Kobayashi hairpin at turn number 11. Through the Kinga turn 10 first, where they'll go onto the brakes, they head into turn 11, and what used to be just known as hairpin now takes the name Kobayashi corner or Kobayashi hairpin, given the fact in honour of the Formula 1 driver from Japan, now racing in endurance race, indeed team principal at Toyota's endurance team in the World Endurance Championship. That corner's where we did see him in 1 year, I believe it was in 2011, making 5 overtakes in a single race, which is very rare at the best of times in Formula 1 racing in Japan. But coming through the very slow left-hander, the sliced corner on the circuit, our drivers will then make their way through the long right-hander at turn number 12 and up towards spoon curve at turn 13. Broken down to its 2 parts, first it's a fast left apex of 13A, followed up by a much slower and gradual apex of 13B, but the key point being it's all about managing understeer and managing the bumps in the road. Then coming out of 13, it's the run onto the back straight and onto the overpass, heading up towards the infamous 130R corner, and as our drivers make their way through there as close as possible to flat out, it's the fastest corner on the circuit through a left-hander, and it's a quick charge onto the brakes. So Casio triangle chicane at turns 15 and 16, and next out through the curvature through turn number 17 to complete a lap and start it all over again. Whereas the first two sectors are about direction change and medium speed handling, the latter sectors are about heaviness on the brakes, performance under braking, also acceleration and high speed handling, and therefore that's why we see the contrast and why this is the ultimate test circuit for drivers. But coming on to our rules for today, we do have some revisions to the rules as it is an endurance race round. Setup wise, it's a fixed setup series with setups provided ahead of each round, and drivers are permitted to change car up to round 5, but will forfeit 50 points in doing so each and every time. We've already seen a car change for Gaz Williams, and I do believe we are seeing a car change today for Jamie Dory, who's moved from the Ford GT to the McLaren MP4 12C. Driver class wise, driver classes shall be finalised by the conclusion of this round today, i.e. round number 3, and qualifying wise there shall be no qualifying session for this round. Now that begs the question, how do we determine the grid? Well, we'll come on to that very shortly. And indeed we come on to the rules of the endurance race, and the race itself shall commence via a rolling start within a designated green flag zone. And we have been informed that green flag zone is coming through the final corner onto the start-finish straight. Drivers shall have 3 fast repairs available, which does encourage our drivers to carry on when they get it wrong. And if they pick up some major damage on the car, they'll be able to get a quick fix where possible. And grid order shall be determined as a class reverse grid based on the latest championship standings. So to put that in layman's terms, the gold class will start ahead of the silver class, and the silver class will start ahead of the bronze class. And what we will do going into this round is we'll set the grid as an inverted standing based on the championship. So whoever is last place in the gold championship, or the lowest placed driver out of all of our gold participants, they start on overall and gold pole. Then we do the same for the silver class, and then we do the same for the bronze class, and that's how we set the grid. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 30 or more instant points. And speaking of pit stops, drivers are mandated to make at least 1 pit stop. We're expecting at least 2 if not 3 here today, and drivers must take on fuel and change all 4 tyres at least once over the course of 1 or more pit stops. So therefore, drivers could choose, if they're making a multi-stop strategy, they could choose just to change 1 or 2 tyres in each and every pit stop, or they may go for all 4, but they must take on some fuel at some point to get to the end of the race unscathed on fuel capacity, and they must change tyres as per the rule and regulation. That's enough talking about the rules and everything in between. We're all here for the racing today, ladies and gentlemen, I can definitely tell you that. And as we get ready to go racing, well, let's look to our circuit right now. Indeed, we've got some new names to introduce on the grid. 2 new names today, and they're 2 brothers, and you can see them there off in the distance very slightly. In fact, we will try and get a better camera angle as our cameraman decides to go even further away. We can reassure you, in the number 19 and making his debut in the gold class today for this season is Bobby Thompson, the privateer, highly decorated real-world motorsporting driver, and we look forward to seeing how he gets on today in the simulator. And we also do have his brother racing. I do believe Aaron Thompson is here currently, and in fact there is Aaron Thompson, both of them running in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, and Aaron Thompson making his way in to the turn 11 hairpin currently, and both of them looking to do their utmost today to take their real-world motorsport experience and show that it translates to the simulator just as much as it can go the other way. But it'll be Aaron Thompson who's in the silver class. Those are 2 new debutants, and we welcome them to the grid. And indeed, the stakes are going to be high here for them today as they look to try and make a grand impression. And what a scenario to come into in the fact they are making their debut in an endurance race round. But whilst we do have 30 seconds before we go racing, we do say hello to a good number of you in the respective stream chats, including the YouTube chat. Alex Meredith, who says he's looking forward to this, and we always look forward to seeing how our drivers get on. We're always happy to have you with us, Alex. We also say hello there to Sonny Bond, who says, watching this with a sliced internet. I was supposed to watch a movie, but this is far more important, and we do appreciate that, Sonny. Glad to have you tune in as always. We also do say hello there to Mercy2345 in the Twitch chat, also in the Facebook chat there to Daniel Fritz, who is on the grid for today, and we're saying this will be fun. I think a little bit nervous about what is coming around the corner very shortly. And we also do say hello to Quad Dash Racing, who says looking for higher positions here. And well, let's wait and see how Quad Dash Racing gets on, as we do have the checker flag out on this session, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to head to the grid. So as our drivers make their way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for today's endurance race. Starting with the gold class, overall pole goes to Gaz Williams for NXTGEN Racing, joined on the front row by teammate for NXTGEN Racing, Jamie Dory. We then have Benjamin McCluskey and Johnny Tahar starting at P3 and P4 there, as they line up together on the second row of the grid, with what is Miguel Gutierrez Garcia starting P5, the privateer, joined by Kevin Motorsport Yellow's Victor Chamorro. We then have Chris Shorter for CSA Blue, who starts P7, joined by Adam Delman for NXTGEN Racing, who starts P8, and we have Jonathan Cook for Performance Link Esports, who is joined by Akram Zanoon to complete your top 10. Behind them on the grid on row number 6 is the combination from South Africa and Matt Shorter for CSA Green, and the Briton of Gavan Gardener for NXTGEN Racing. And as we look to what is row number 7, the final gold row is Stephan Wessels for CSA Pink and Bobby Thompson, the privateer. Tom Bingham will start off our silvers on P15 now on the 8th row of the grid for Performance Link Esports, joined by Made for Racing's Jack Parker. And then we have Nesta De La Fleur, who starts P17 for KFM Motorsport Yellow, who is joined by Stefan Albanese, Senior for DRS Esports. Then David Camano for KFM Motorsport Red and Paul Scott for Next Gen Racing complete your top 20, with row number 11 going to Matthew Eddy for Next Gen Racing and Ben Bennyworth for Quest Autosport. Alfonso Marion and Lee Horn make up what is their row number 12 for KFM Motorsport Red and Next Gen Racing. And then we come on to row number 13, Tristan Engelstad for Quad Dash Racing and Sergio Gonzalez make up that row for KFM Motorsport Yellow, followed by Performance Link Esports Russell Fowler and Aaron Thompson. There's John Meredith, who starts on bronze pole P29 ahead of Wesley Lewin, with Jorge Santos and Mark Sykes starting on your 16th row. Row 17 goes to Elwin Sykes and Alex Rogenbach, and there's Davide Farber and Sean Scooter on row at number 18, and Daniel Fritz and Jordan Baber on the final row. But the grid is set, ladies and gentlemen. They're coming through the final corner, and we are ready for green flag racing any moment now as our drivers come on down, and Gaz Williams takes us to the green. And how will it go after 2 hours of racing? Well, we're about to find out as our drivers head down, and we're waiting for Williams to get us underway. And it's lights out and away we go for 2 hours of racing here at Suzuka as Gaz Williams gets us underway. But as he does and charges down into turn number 1, look at Jamie Dory trying to go around the outside here into the opening corner. It's bold on the brakes, but as they come roaring on in, the score looks even between them. But Dory does scoop around the outside, and as they make their way through turn number 2 and up towards 3, all the drivers charging on through. But it looks as though everyone's been able to safely make it through the opening couple of corners as they now come through left into right at turns 3 and 4, side by side for the most of the field. But everyone trying to negotiate the way on through as we can see Tristan Engelstad exchanging manoeuvres here with Lee Horn, finds his way clear. We had an incident a bit further back, I do believe. We'll have to take a look back shortly what's happened in the bronze class. We believe a number of bronze drivers have fallen by the wayside, but those who are gaining were Jorge Santos right now side by side with Jordan Babois. Remembering that Babois started from towards the back of the bronze class, and as they head up towards turn 7, Babois already through and up to P3 in bronze as they charge their way around into Degner 1 shortly. But as they do, meanwhile, we've got drivers falling down the order still. And looking a bit further up the road, we can see here in the silver class, with Sergio Gonzalez having a good start, making up 4 places, and starting out 5 places in the silver class alone as he battles here with teammate Nesta De La Fleur, albeit the KFM Motorsport drivers here working together. De La Fleur going defensive in order to cover off Gonzalez and make sure that Engelstad and Alfonso Marin battle one another in the 2 Mercedes. But as they head all the way up towards Spoon Corner now, they'll settle down to a brief rhythm, and instead we look to Bobby Thompson versus Adam Delman here. As Thompson up the inside, smooth move there from Bobby Thompson, again another place. They come around and the privateer continue to make progress as they roll off Apex and now up towards 130R. But as they do, Akram Zanoon, one of the biggest gainers in the gold class since the start, making his way up towards 130R now, all over the back of Delman as they charge away in towards the braking zone, looking to the inside, can't quite find it at the moment, but they are dropping Gavan Gardener and Stephan Wessels quite early as they make their way towards the end of this opening lap. And as they do, well, we will take a look back at what happened at the start of the race with regards to the bronze class in particular, because we have had some very sizable incidents in the class. But after 1 lap of racing, it is Jamie Dory who leads by 4 tenths of a second. Gaz Williams P2, there's Benjamin McCluskey P3, Johnny Tarr P4, as we can see there, Williams trying to follow Dory down towards turn number 1. Johnny Tarr P4, followed by Miguel Gutierrez Garcia P5, Chris Shorter P6, Bobby Thompson P7, Adam Dolman P8, Akram Zanoon P9, Gavan Gardener follows up in P10, and it is with Stephan Wessels at P11 as our drivers make the way on around. We then do have in the silver class your leader Tom Bingham, who's P12 overall, currently headed David Camano P13, followed by Ben Bennyworth, who completes the top 3 of the silver class. And then going a bit further back to the bronze class, it's Mark Sykes who finds himself leading the way in the bronze class, albeit without a front bumper on the Ferrari 488 Evo, and he's ahead of Elwin Sykes, not related, the 2 of them, and good friends off the circuit however. And as they make their way up towards turn 6, well, it's then going to be Jordan Babois who's very quickly getting onto the back of this pair as they make their way onwards on this second lap of racing. But as we do really refresh the overlay on screen, ladies and gentlemen, so you can see the circuit map on the top right corner of your screen. It decides to hide itself, and now it does come on back. It's gone very wrong there for Tristan Engelstad, who loses the rear of the car and with it into the barrier. Now he tries to get it stopped in time, and he will, I think, just wait to see the field come on through, but he tries to get that car turned around, given the fact that right now he is in a bit of a precarious position, but he does get it off the road. But they're a bit too much power down on relatively cold and fresh tyres, and with the Quad Dash Racing driver having a nightmare moment, as meanwhile looking further up the road, drama in the battle for P7 here between where is Adam Delman and Miguel Gutierrez Garcia, as it does look as though Delman trying to put the pressure on, can't find his way in at the moment as they roll off the apex of Spoon and now onwards towards 130R, and we jump on board here with the Next Gen Racing driver in the number 77. Now as he builds his way up towards 130R here, heading to the left-hander, Weeds all in the toe right now of Garcia. Equal machines, these two. It all comes down to drivers. And you can see that better run through the corner from Delman, having a battle with a little bit of power oversteer as he tries to settle the car down corner exit. Keeping in mind, they're making their way through 130R in excess of 140 miles an hour at least, if not more than that. And therefore, right now, that rear end of the Porsche is going to lift considerably so, as they make their way across the line and onto another lap here. 4 minutes past. We've got a long way to go in this journey at Suzuka. And Delman here not quite close enough on Casio to think about a potential move into turns 1 and 2 this time around. But Delman definitely trying to push the stakes here and push the pace high as he makes his way through the right-hander. And well, we leave this battle for a brief moment as they make the way uphill. But the point being, as they go into the S's, no way through for Delman at the moment. He's having to really bide his time, but he will find an opportunity eventually if he keeps the pressure on. Meanwhile, at the very front of the field, Jamie Dory now with the flames splitting out the rear of the McLaren MP412C. That V8 bi-turbo, it may be of a much older generation dating back to the mid-2010s, but still the car fighting on in the simulator. And as he makes his way in to Degner 1, we can see how right now he's causing a bit of a traffic jam where he's got two of his next-gen racing counterparts queuing up behind him. And as they make their way through the right-hander at Degner 2, up towards the hairpin, it is nose to tail right now with Gianni Tahar under pressure from Chris Shorter, and will Shorter back today and back fighting fit, it would seem, as they go into Kobayashi corner. And as they do, side by side they exit, and it is going to be Shorter who gains the upper hand here as they make their way on around. Now the Mercedes will have the overspeed here in terms of straight line acceleration, which Tahar's going to try and use to his advantage around the outside into smooth. But Shorter here, if he's bold on the brakes, he can defend this well. The point being, they're both going to cost one another time. Look at Bobby Thompson in the rear of the picture. He sees an opening. Tahar goes a bit deep as a result of the side by side with Shorter, and Thompson now gets involved. Contact between Thompson and Tahar. Tahar's forced up onto the exit curb there. That could have been curtains to the pair of them, but it wasn't to be. Thankfully they're able to get away with it, but that has enabled Gutierrez Garcia to come on through versus Tahar. So Tahar's lost multiple places, all because of the fact a bit of a rub and contact with Thompson. That all came about as a result of what was a quite nice move from Chris Shorter. But Garcia defends hard, but meanwhile Delman trying to hold on as they make the way on through Casio. And you can see that Stephan Wessels now trying to get involved. He's found his way ahead of Gavan Gardener as they make the way over Casio, and now down onto another lap they go. And Will Wessels here playing it very slow and smart to start off today's racing, in the fact he's not made too much progress early on. The only driver he's passed so far, or drivers we should say, are Gavan Gardener and Akram Zanoun on circuit, with Jonathan Cook and also Victor Shimaro have fallen by the wayside. And we'll talk a little bit about what exactly happened to them at the start of the race when we do get an opportunity. But right now Stephan Wessels just waiting, I think playing the long game here, and deciding more to focus on this initial stint being a strategic stint where he's trying to position himself for the later stages of the race. We'll talk more about that in due course, and our strategy is going to be a big factor here today. That as the gold class continues to try and break its way away from the rest of the field, we look to your silver class leader, Tom Bingham, the Performance Link Esports driver who made his debut last time out of Fuji, feeling very comfortable right now and leading the silver class comfortably by almost 2 seconds to David Camano as he heads up towards Degner 1. And as he makes his way on through, meanwhile we do look to John Meredith here in the Meredith Racing Porsche 992, and as he comes on down through turn number 6, he's got the pressure of the gold drivers, I should say, the silver class drivers around him. We'll get it right eventually, as we can see Jack Barker just in front, P12 silver, and what is their P29 overall. And as they make their way up towards Degner 1, and nose to tail they go. And it's a horrible place to be if you're Meredith, in the fact that you're caught between two drivers of a class that's higher than you, and you're not rewarded for battling with them and taking places off of them. But I wonder if Meredith right now feels as though he's got a little bit more pace than Barker, and therefore he wants to try and get on through. But of course, if he's battling, then he ends up in a scenario whereby he may actually cost himself more time, and in the end Barker may try and come back at him. But I think both Barker and Meredith are going to drive quite smartly, but it is one of those conundrums that you have to try and work your way through, and we're too early into the race right now for him really to negotiate this on strategy. Speaking of a similar situation here, we do see a swap in what is there, the battle for P11 overall, as that is Akram Zanoun who goes on through in the gold class KFM Motorsport Mercedes AMG Evo versus what is there, David Camano for the KFM Motorsport Red Lamborghini Huracan Evo. So therefore they decide to swap places, Camano being P2 in the silver class. He's under a little bit of pressure from Ben Bennyworth now as they make the way on down. But meanwhile, we've got a car to the wall there at Casio Triangle, to the tyre barrier we should say, and that's Alfonso Marin. I'm not sure what's happened to the KFM Motorsport Red driver, but it's gone very wrong. He wants to try and get that car into the pit lane, but he's having to wait for the deluge of cars to move aside, and he finally finds some space to do so. But we'll get a replay of that very shortly as to what happened. But meanwhile, as we look back towards the front of the field in terms of overall gold classification, this is Jamie Dory, your race leader right now, who really does seem to be starting to struggle in terms of the pace of this race now that we are towards the end of the opening 10 minutes, and it looks like the Porsche 992s are starting to bring about that pace advantage that we have seen so far this season, whereas the race goes on, the Porsche naturally seems to build an advantage so long as the tyres are in the ideal operating window and they do have some life left. Now the McLaren MP412C is one of those cars where it is a bit of a unicorn. You don't see it on the grid too often, but when you do see it on the grid in a GT3 class race, if it's pushed to its limit and the driver knows what they're doing, of which we can assure you that Jamie Dory does know what he's doing, this is a car that can definitely take the fight to the very best of them out there, but it's got to be driven up right on the ragged edge. And the thing about that is, when you're in a longer race such as this, driving it hard and fast does cause the tyres to overheat, particularly the rear side tyres. They can feel a lot of wear very quickly, and that can lead to a very unstable rear end. But you're noticing how Dory's able to get the better run of the low speed corners versus the Porsche drivers, led by Gaz Williams, while McCluskey also tucked in, then Chris Shorter, and then we have the Ferrari of Bobby Thompson. So therefore the Porsche 992 seems to be stronger on medium to high speed corners, which you would expect to be fair given the centre of mass distribution being over the rear axle of the Porsche compared to in the middle of the car for the McLaren MP412C. But Dory right now definitely feeling the pressure when we go through third gear corners and upwards, and you can see that again here going through 130R, gap 3/10, and the Porsche is just able to follow in his wall tracks quite comfortably as he comes towards the end of this lap and goes on to what for him will be lap number 6 very shortly. Now we did talk about earlier about the idea of bringing you some replays of what happened at the race start, and we do get an opportunity to take a look back at what happened to a number of drivers, and well, here is the green flag sequence as we do cut away now to the replay. So as our drivers did go green flag racing out in this distant camera shot, you can see most of the field all coming together in the run down towards turn number 1. A relatively calm start for the most part as everyone charged down towards the braking zone for the opening corner. But it does go wrong for a couple of drivers, including Victor Shimura, who's one of the first drivers to have it go wrong through the opening corners here in the KFM Motorsport yellow Ferrari. Heads up the hill towards turn number 3. And as he does so, gets into a little bit of a quite a close encounter with the Porsche behind him there, but it looks okay. And then there's contact with a car, and I believe that may have been, we're trying to understand whose car that was, but Shimura sent wide there by the Porsche, and then Wesley Lewin having a bit of an incident as well. And well, we're seeing the tail end of what happened there for Wesley Lewin. We get a further replay back at the race start, and this is what happened from the perspective of the CSA Pink Drive in the bronze class, who was running quite comfortably in the midfield. I think he's coming into the single incident there. Oh goodness me, and that is one of the Performance League esports cars that go around. John Meredith also losing the rear. I'm not quite sure, there's a bit of contact there. Multiple drivers having to take evasive action, including Davide Fava and Jorge Santos. That's Russell Fowler had it all go wrong. And when we take a look back at what exactly happened to Russell Fowler from the on-board here as he made his way into turns 3 and 4. Right at the back of Matthew Addy, and the rear of the car lifts up now. I wonder if there's a bit of contact. Well, there's contact with Meredith. You can see the car bolstering there under a bit of contact. I think Meredith tried to go the way round, but there for Russell Fowler, it went very wrong indeed. And, well, in terms of further incidents after that, as our drivers got themselves back up to speed very quickly, we did also have an incident for Daniel Fritz on the open lap. This was at Degner 2, after Jorge Santos almost got it wrong, and Fritz there having to take evasive action, but had nowhere to go with the wayward car of Davide Favo. So therefore, it all went very wrong for the CSA drive, with the Whiskey Runners Racing drive being collected. And, well, Daniel Fritz there just in the wrong place at the right time. And then we did also have an incident for Matt Shorter. And this is what happened to Matt Shorter into Spoon, going into the first part of Spoon on the brakes. Goes a bit deep there and take evasive action from the Ferrari in front. And, well, then having to go on to the brakes and contact. There were cars behind Jack Barkles to get into the medley. Meredith as well. So quite an adventurous and eventful open lap of racing here at the Suzuka circuit. But as we return to your live pictures now, ladies and gentlemen, still plenty of racing to go. And indeed, we've been in the replays for quite some time. What we can tell you is up front, we had a bit of a change in the fact that Chris Shorter has picked his way up into P3 in the gold class and overall. Benjamin McCluskey's gone down to P5, so Bobby Thompson's also got ahead. And as they make the way out of turn number 7, and this time we'll try and get a replay of what exactly happened there very shortly. We are hearing that Gianni Tahar's incident has seen him have to be towed to the pits, and well, Gianni Tahar, who we saw moments ago, end up in a bit of a nasty moment in at Casio Triangle. We will get a replay of that, and also what happened to Alfonso Marin. But as we continue to look at the live pictures here for a time, well, Chris Shorter right now, the man who is expected to be the fastest driver out there, given the pace that he demonstrated in our first round of the season, albeit not in the tens of Fuji, so we had no marker, but at Sebring he was absolutely flying as the CSA Blue driver, and right now he's showing that once again here. He may be in the mid-pack, mid-season for the gold class in terms of championship standings, but that belies the fact that right now that Porsche 992 combination with him seems to work absolutely like a charm. as he comes on through Spoon, tucked into the toe there of Williams once again. It is a long race here. It's a marathon, not a sprint, as they say. And I think Shorter right now will be thinking about picking on the places one by one, and knowing what he can't do on circuit, he may just be able to do as equally on strategy. As the drivers make their way through 130R, nose to tail they go, and Williams at this point having to defend more and more, trying to keep Chris Shorter behind as they head on to the brakes. And we can see there, this little bit of squabbling between them is buying Jamie Dory just a bit of breathing room to focus on his racing lines and not worry about pushing the brakes as hard as he may be forced to under pressure from Williams, so therefore this is working out. But meanwhile, as they make their way down towards turn number 1, McCluskey decides to stay on racing line, and meanwhile everyone else decides to tuck into the inside and follow the leader. And as they come into turn 1 this time around, no change once again, but you can definitely see how the top four all biting for an opportunity to go racing. Meanwhile, McCluskey playing the longer game here, which is to wait, and I think he's thinking about how he could potentially jump this on strategy and potentially save some fuel in the meantime. As they head on up, we do take a look back what happened on lap number 4, but before we do, we've got a bit of a battle here between Shorter, who goes a bit deep through 6, has to try and go side by side with Williams through 5, and that's the problem with the S's. Once you start going side by side, you've got to pick the right time, and also you do end up, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you end up understeering wide, and that's exactly where Thompson now is trying to capitalise, but he's being forced around the outside here of Degner 1, not a place to overtake on the outside. The inside's where you're going to be if you're defending or trying to make an overtake, and as they roll off Degner 2, we jump on board here with the number 19 of Thompson, as they head up towards the hairpin. And into the braking zone here, McCluskey was close by him. You can see him there briefly in the centre of rearview mirror camera as they make their way out to turn number 11. McCluskey once again just falling back and tucking into formation, and I think this is where right now McCluskey and Thompson are playing a bit of an interesting game. Thompson wants to go chasing after the top three. McCluskey meanwhile is not keen to get involved in this fight, but the more Thompson and also Shorter and company will fight, they'll naturally bring McCluskey close to them, and that's where McCluskey is trying to make the strategy work, I think, rather than what could be considered to be a charge. And well, to be fair, if it works out for McCluskey, it could go a long way in terms of jumping him up the order. But as they make their way up towards 130R this time around, well, it is your leader, Jamie Dory, and right now Williams so close he could reach out and touch the rear wing of that McLaren. But the thing here is that as they go onto the brakes of Casio, Shorter takes another look, and this time he goes all in on the brakes. Williams sees him coming, defends outside to inside. This is going to compromise their exit and give Dory a bit more time, but Shorter's in the toe. He's at the better half of the corner. He's going to try and get the nose in, right onto the inside wall, going on the pit wall here as they make their way out towards turn 1. And now Shorter has an opportunity. Williams is in the toe of Dory. That's going to keep him ahead for a brief moment. Shorter's still got a small overlap. He's going to fully commit into turn 1. Williams tries to squeeze him as they come on down. There's no contact between them, and Shorter just backs out of it as they make their way up through turn number 2. Meanwhile, not to just focus on the gold class, we've got plenty of battling happening in the silver class as well. And here is Lee Horn right now trying to find his way past Nestor de Flu for P7 in what is the silver class. They make the way on around and in towards turn number 2. De Flu goes a bit deep, and as they head up towards where turns 3 and 4, when it is going to be Horn all over the back of the BMW M4 driver as they wind their way through the S's once again. Nothing between them here as they come up the hill. We also had a bit of a battle between Sergio Gonzalez and Paul Scott, which we'll get a replay of shortly. That was in the battle for P4 in the silver class. They're just a bit further up the road, but it does look as though De La Fou has been able to keep Lee Horn behind him for the time being. And here's the replay of the battle for P4 in the silver class between Gonzalez and Scott. And was in the exit of Degner 2. You can see Scott was the leader on corner exit, albeit I think making a mistake at Degner 2. Gonzalez looking to go all the way around the outside of the hairpin, and was they made the way off the corner. Gonzalez had more room to play with, and this race was not over yet. The Ferrari showing its straight line acceleration as they made the way up towards Spoon Curve, and well, with that momentum, Scott's still on the inside, so Gonzalez being made to go all the way round, but in the end Scott deciding the better of it and backing out there and not battling any further. I think where the fact further battling would cause them to lose the pace and the toe of Camano's up the road, and also bring Albanese Senior in to the hunt. But a nice move there from Gonzalez to take P4 in the silver class. And as we return to your live pictures now, Lee Horn under pressure from Matthew Addy as they make the way off of what is turn at number 13 and up towards 14, heading towards 130R. And as they do, we say hello to Nigel Stott, who says can't update, so can't race. It's very unfortunate, Nigel. We would love to see you on the grid today, and we hope we're able to see you in 2 weeks' time for round at number 4. And meanwhile, we had a major incident up the road. Oh my good lord, and what on earth has happened here? We've got Bobby Thompson trying to make his way into the pit lane, and with that, we've also got the Ferrari of Wesley Lewin. Something's gone absolutely cataclysmically wrong at the Casio Triangle chicane, and in particular Bobby Thompson, it would seem, has been the victim of whatever's played out there. Well, we'll have to take a look back at what exactly happened, and in fact we do have an immediate replay coming up, and here's the story, and what our focus is Gaz Williams as he came on down through Casio. A bit of contact with Chris Shorter, and well, Williams, Shorter, and also Thompson all coming together. Multiple cars off the road, including Adam Delmont, and also what I believe there was McCluskey, and then Thompson. Well, Wesley Lewin had gone round in the pits already, so Thompson just in the wrong place at the wrong time with Lewin blocking the pit entry, and that explains the full story there. But my goodness, what a moment, and how that's changed the dynamic of the gold class as Thompson leaves the pit lane now with a fully repaired car. Albeit he's down in P11 in the gold class, but a lot of pace at his fingertips. Jamie Dory's just been bought a massive gap of 4 seconds at the front of the field. But with that, you can see the charge from everyone, and also Akram Zanu's now moved up into P2 with Miguel Gutierrez Garcia behind in P3 and Gavan Gardener P4. So with all of that, pretty much the second half of the bottom half of the gold field is now leading behind Jamie Dory in terms of P2, 3 to P4, and McCluskey's picked up the pieces, and then Chris Shorter now has been pushed back to P6, and well, it did look as though there Williams and Shorter both in a bit of a nip and tuck, and Thompson just in the wrong place as he came into the scene of the incident, and it further exacerbated things, but definitely there a moment of contention. And as we continue to look at the gold class here, well, Adam Delmont right now trying to chase down Chris Shorter as they make the way up towards 130 yard, with Shorter noting some damage on the front end of that Porsche 9 and 2. That's going to cost him quite a bit of top end speed, and Delmont here staying close but not able to get involved as we had somebody get it wrong going into 130 yard. Not quite sure. We've got a bit of smoke up there. I believe it may be an incident involving Sean Scooter. At least that's what I'm getting on my data screen. But we'll have to find out in due course. As meanwhile, that's Tom Bingham taking a bit of a different line going through Casio Triangle, missing his apex there. And well, now he's got Ben Bennyworth trying to make a move on me. That's the Performance Link Esports driver. As Bennyworth for Crystal Autosport looking to go hunting here, looking up the inside as they make the way down towards turn 1. 20 minutes to the race complete. Still another 100 minutes to go. And as they head down to the braking zone, Bennyworth backs off and decides to let the move go this time, rather than try and send it. But as they roll the way onwards towards the S's, we do say hello to Count Andreas cheering on Tristan Engelstad. And to give you an update on Engelstad after the unfortunate lap 1 incident we did see for him, he's currently in P13 in the silver class. Here is the Mercedes AMG Evo driver Quad Dash Racing chasing after Alfonso Marin. They're battling for P12 silver on his P31 overall, and it's a long road ahead of them. But to be fair, never give up, because you never know what can happen. And indeed, we have just seen in the last couple of minutes half the gold field fall down the order due to an incident going through Casio Triangle. Anything can happen until the checker flag is waved, and that's why these guys are not giving up. As Engelstad tries to look for the move, they're trying to tease out a mistake from Marin. Marin does well to cover there, just simply puts the car right in the middle of the road, inconveniences the pair of them, and says to Engelstad, well, you can fight it all you want, but I'm simply just going to make this car nice and wide, and you're going to lose time as a result of it. Albeit they've got to be aware of the fact they do have Aaron Thompson gradually closing on them, as we can see here, the privateer heading across the start-finish line in towards turn number 1, and trying to get closer and closer, trying to pick up a couple more places. But as they make the way up the road, we have had a spin. That's Alfonso Marin who's gone round, and what I believe that may have been under his own volition in terms of the rear end of the car, letting go, albeit we will try and take a look back at that when we can, and indeed we will be getting a replay of that after we see what happened to Sean Scooter on lap number 10, and we started with what happened to the CSA Blue driver. And this was in to the spoon curve, 13A, goes in, takes a bit too much apex curve, and the car just drops off the exit curve there. Now, to explain what we believe may have just happened is the fact the curve, the red and white part of it compared to the green AstroTurf beyond it, the curve is slightly raised. I think Scooter just going a bit deep onto the curve, saw the rear right tyre drop off of the curve, and therefore when he tried to get the power down, he just kicked the car around as he made his way up towards the second part of spoon. But an unfortunate moment there for the number 12 driver, and that spin has set him back to a degree. And we take a look back at what just happened to Alfonso Marin going into what was turn at number 2. He was being chased down at the time by none other than Tristan Engelstad. It goes into the corner on the brakes, and the rear of the car lets go, and that we're having a bit of a negative bias in the car, a rearward bias if you will, has just caused the rear end to step out aggressively, and he's not been able to tame it. But as we return to your live pictures now, things are calming down for a brief moment, and well, we do look from the back of the silver class field up towards your bronze leader, and here he is, Mark Sykes, still under pressure from Jordan Baybois as they come down through turn 6 into 7. And as they roll the way through the long left-hander, you can see right now, Sykes, despite the wounds on the car, the Ferrari still punching a hole through the air, and Jordan Baybois close behind. But I wonder if Baybois decided to back this off for the simple reason. You can see this long line of silver class cars. We've got a car off there on the right for a brief moment on the inside of the two Degners. We're not quite sure who that is. We believe it may be Adam Delmont, who's taken a bit of a different approach. In fact, it is Adam Delmont, we can confirm. He's had an instant at Degner 1, which has cost him very dear. But not to get distracted from the point right now, I think Sykes really been boxed in behind what is this run of 4 silver cars from Paul Scott to Lee Horn, then Nesta Delafou, and also Matthew Addy. And right now, Baybois can just save fuel and try to jump Sykes in the pit lane. But as they make their way up towards Spoon Curve, it's a long way to go here for the drivers. And well, Sykes, to be fair, if he can keep his head down and keep the pressure away from him, he may just be in with a chance of the win here, if not a minimum of a podium, as they head up towards 130 this time. As they charge their way up towards the long left-hander, we look back to Sean Scudder, and well, we can see the CSA racing teams now all starting to regroup in what is the bronze class. We've got Scudder behind Davide Favo there, as the CSA blue drivers are both trying to chase down Elwin Sykes, P3, for one of the other CSA racing teams, CSA Green. But as they make their way onto the brakes here for Casio Triangle, Scudder definitely the faster of the trio right now, faster by a second a lap on average. And I think he'll be wondering whether he can try and creep his way on through. As we see a little bit of a fishtail moment there, the rear of the car just sliding on power. It can happen through turn number 17, given the fact it's quite a hard corner with regards to the amount of steering lock you have to apply. And when you get the power down in these machines, where they're putting out in excess of 500 horsepower rear wheel drive, that does cause the rear tyres to really light up and the rear of the car to slide on through with some oversteer. But as they make their way through turns at 1 and 2, Scudder right now definitely trying to push on. He wants to try and find a way past Favo. They'll need to work it on strategy, and also I think get on the radio to Favo and say that Scudder may just be a little bit faster than you. Can you possibly let him go? But as they make their way up through at turn number 6 and down towards 7, they drop. Meanwhile, we do look back to this long concertina line, if you will, of the silvers battling for P6 in class. The bronze leaders just behind them. And Matthew Addy finds himself at the back of this group now behind Delafou. And as they come out of Degner 2, we can see they're not too far away. Jonathan Cook and Russell Fowler both trying to close up here into this battle. They've got quite a way to go in order to do so. But the key point being, if they are able to get close, then they can start to think, particularly in Fowler's case, about gaining some more places in the silver class. He is currently P10 in class, and he is at 4 seconds off. But right now, it does seem to be a bit of a stalemate. And this nicely brings us on to discussing strategy. Now, at this point in the race, given the fact we've almost cleared the opening half now, we are 26 minutes in, and indeed all the drivers at a point in this race where the battles which we saw early on, particularly the two wides for the opening sequence of corners, will now have calmed down and gone away. That's not to say we're not going to see some battling. The suspender thought was Baybois here, and the better run out to Spoon, looking in the move into 130 after the lead of the bronze class versus Sykes, as they head into left-hander. Mark Sykes on the outside does not really have anywhere to defend here other than trying to cut it back, but Baybois covers it off nicely. And as they make their way into Casio Triangle, I think it's a foregone conclusion here. The Frenchman takes the lead of the bronze class, and Baybois' mission right now will be to run away with this as rapidly as possible and not make any mistakes in the long term. But as they head up towards another lap here, Sykes, to be fair, not really having anything else he could do. Once Baybois was on his inside in the run down the back straight, well, there, going on the inside too wide into 130. The driver who is fully alongside on the inside has the authority to the apex, and the driver on the outside has to try and cut it back, or hope the driver on the inside overshoots the corner. But when Baybois is running at the pace he is at this season, he does not make mistakes. And as they make the way up through the S's, Sykes now will be focusing on just staying with Baybois and seeing if a mistake potentially comes his way, or he can make the return on strategy later on in this race. But as they head the way up towards turn at number 7, we do come back to the point we were making with regards to strategy, and that is now that we are nearing the 30-minute mark of this race, our driver's focus will now be more and more on the close battles to them and thinking about how they can potentially run this race in terms of strategy. Now, we do know there's one mandatory stop with fuel that needs to go in the car, plus all 4 tyres must be changed. But on average, in these 2-hour endurance races that we've seen in previous seasons of the GT3 League, we normally do see at least 2 pit stops for the GT3 drivers, when given the fact the tyres do wear quite significant, and also the fuel does need to keep going in the car. And with that in mind, we reckon that right now we are starting to enter that opening pit window for a good number of drives. Indeed, we should be seeing the first strategic pit stops anytime between the 30-minute mark and what is about the 50-minute mark. But who is going to go first? And if you're in this long line of silver cars, such as you are Nesta Nesta Durfu right now for Gavan Motorsport Yellow. You might be starting to think about coming into the pits, getting yourself some clear air, and then looking for a move. But right now, trying to make a move on circuit is Lee Horn up the inside of Paul Scott as they make the way in a drag race up towards 130. Scott's on the outside, Horn's on the inside. Meanwhile, Delafu's going to try and make it a 2-for-1 here as they come into left-hander. Goes in, goes too hot, however, goes a bit deep. Scott cuts it back, but as they make the way up towards Casio Triangle, Delafu has got it parked on the inside. He's been able to catch the car. Further contact there between the wheel arches, but Paul Scott in the end knocked slightly wide, but I think being a bit adventurous to try and go all the way round. Delafu was always going to fight for it, flashing his lights there, feeling that he was deserved the place, but in the end, Delafu has been able to get the move done. A nice bit of opportunistic driving there from Delafu. And now the Gavan Motorsport Yellow driver gaining one place will try and go hunting after Horn and break it away from Scott. But the point being, coming back to strategy, is the fact that if our drivers are able to pit now or in the near future and they can find that track space, it may be worth multiple seconds a lap given the way the race is flying. And to give you an idea, over the last couple of laps, Lee Horn and Nesta Durfu have both been lapping in the high 201s, the low 202s, based on the pace of Paul Scott, who has been lapping to a degree in the 202s. But if they are able to unleash the pace we saw earlier on, they'll be lapping in the mid 201s by comparison. That'd be worth half a second a lap to them, and well, over 3 or 4 laps that can add up and enable you to jump multiple places. But speaking of jumping ground here, we look back to your overall leader of Jamie Dory, and well, Akram Zanuna right now close that rapidly. Remember, Dory did have a 4-second lead after the trials and tribulations of the gold class going through Casio Triangle, where all went wrong between Williams and Chris Shorter, and then everybody else followed through into the seat of the instant. But with a 4-second gap that was created, Dory's gap now has come down to half a second, if that, as we do see Zanuna and Gutierrez Garcia close behind. The Mercedes drivers starting to really come alive in the form of Zanuna, and well, that Mercedes shine, it's not just about straight line speed, but also it's got some raw grunt in the race to contend with. As they head into the braking zone here for Casio Triangle once more, 30 minutes complete, 90 to go, and with that in mind, Dory right now, well, I do wonder what Dory may be thinking in terms of pace. Well, I can tell you one thing, right now, Dory's last lap, a 201 point, well, in fact, that last lap was a 2-minute flat .73, Zanuna a 2-minute flat .5, whereas the previous laps before that, Dory a 201.3 versus Zanuna's 200.1, and that goes to show you, Dory has been backing off to a degree, I think trying to get the car to go longer, but in return as well, Zanuna right now absolutely hammering and hustling that Mercedes around, albeit when he's got the Porsche of Gutierrez Garcia and the heroic Gavan Gardener behind matching for pace, he's under some pressure of his own degree. But as they make the way on around, we have had a pit stop for Chris Shorter, who's made his way into the pits. Scheduled stop here, and the first one, he's got himself out of the traffic, and I think he's deploying exactly what we were talking about only moments ago about buying himself some space and circuit, and this is going to bring him out into an absolutely beautiful bit about a track in the fact as he makes way out of the pit lane. Next car up the road is John Meredith, who is going to be at least 3.5 seconds up the road when all things are considered, and well, behind he's got Jorge Santos, who is 9 seconds behind. So right now, Chris Shorter has bought himself some space to work with, and that is going to work a treat if he's able to put the lap time down. But as he makes his way on around, meanwhile, oh my good lord, and we've had a major incident there, going through turn at number 7, that's Jonathan Cook, and that is Jordan Baybois, our bronze leader, being caught up in an instant, and as we said earlier, it's not over until the checkered flag's there, and Baybois, who was looking to be running smoothly for the lead of the bronze class, it's all come to an abrupt halt. The front right suspension on that car is severely damaged. He's going to try and get it to the pits, rather than have it towed and drop a whole lap of the race, plus also the time he has to spend waiting for the car to make its way to the pit lane. But Baybois really struggling there with the fact he's only really operating with 3 wheels on terra firma, and can the Frenchman get the car back to the pit lane? It's going to be a struggle, but if he does so, it will be a Herculean effort, and with it he may be rewarded later on. But what on earth happened there to trigger that off? Well, we get a replay immediately, and this is what happened, and we look from the perspective of Jonathan Cook, who at the time was chasing out of place versus Matthew, and he was chasing P8 in the silver class. They made the way out of turn 7, Cook on the power, rear of the car lets go, hits the tyre barrier, and then goes back onto the circuit, and Baybois just has nowhere to go at that point, and that explains it. We take a look back further from what was Baybois' perspective as we ride on board. And here, keep in mind, the left-hander here of turn 7 is uphill. He'll see that Cook's starting to lose the car, but he couldn't have predicted this was going to happen, where Cook just comes right back across the road. And also, you can see their contact with what we believe was the car of Russell Fowler. So Performance Link Esports having 2 of their cars being wiped out in that one incident. And, well, what a nasty incident it was. As, meanwhile, that does mean now the bronze lead goes the way of Sean Scooter, the CSA Blue driver, who's ahead of Elwin Sykes. And, well, Scooter right now is not going to believe his fortunes have turned around so rapidly, but it can happen at any time here at Suzuka. And, well, whilst it may be in the early stages, or at least the first half of our season, many of you will be aware of the fact Suzuka is typically towards the end of a motorsporting calendar for a given international series, and that is because it is normally a circuit where titles are decided, or at least there is a lot of championship defining drama, and where you only need to look at Formula 1 over the last 4 decades to see that in practice. Indeed, do the years 1989 through to 1991 ring bells. For those who are anoraks, they will definitely do so with regards to centre across. But meanwhile, as we come to our modern day racing here, Sean Scooter right now doing everything he can to keep things on the tarmac and stay out of trouble. He's had a very eventful opening portion of this race, particularly the lap 1 instance, but as he heads up towards what is Spoon Curve right now, just keeping everything calm and collected. And meanwhile, whilst all this has been playing out, we've also had an incident involving Jamie Dory, but we have a new gold leader of Akram Zanoun, the privateer here, leading the way. Meanwhile, Miguel Gutierrez Garcia under pressure, and as he comes through left into right, where it does look as though right now Gutierrez Garcia really feeling the haste from Gavan Gardener. Gardener's going to try and use the Ferrari straight line speed advantage here, albeit it's incremental, but he'll take everything he can get. He's on the left of your picture is Gardner, Garcia on the right. Meanwhile, McCluskey thinks about putting it in the middle, decides not to in the end, and as they make the way into turn 1, Garcia goes a bit deep there. As you can see, Gardner hesitating, hitting the race, the apex curve of 1, they both survive it, but he gets it done. Gavan Gardener takes P2, and a nice move there for Next Gen Racing Pink. And as they make the way through the right hander of turn number 4 into 5, well, right now the number 24 driver keeping his head down, keeping his cool, and well, that's a bold move there. And Benjamin McCluskey by comparison just waiting in the wings and trying to find a way into this fight. But again, we believe McCluskey may be playing the strategic game here and trying to gain at least 3 or 4 seconds in the pit lane through saving fuel, and therefore just having a much shorter stop. But as they make the way up towards Degner's 1 and 2, meanwhile, we get an opportunity to take a look back at what happened to Jamie Dory only moments ago, and this is what saw the McLaren MP412C driver fall from the lead of the gold class. Now going into turn 1, under braking. Now, was there contact there? It doesn't look as though there was contact between Zanoun and Dory. They were very close together, to be fair, from the camera angle we could see, but it looks though Dory losing the rear of the car under pressure and under braking, and there's no apparent damage to the car, but Dory definitely there, really being pushed to the limit of the McLaren. As we said earlier, when the McLaren is pushed to the limit, it will bite back when it's driven at the utmost, but that's where all the pace lies. An unfortunate mistake there from Jamie Dory, but Akram Zanoun gaining the lead in the end by putting pressure on the race leader, and well, that's how the story has changed. We say hello to John Higgins there in the YouTube chat, who asks what car is Jamie in, and in reference to Jamie Dory, we can confirm he is there in the McLaren MP412C as he makes his way into 130R. But as he comes to a left-hander and now up towards Casio Triangle, meanwhile we do look from Jamie Dory to a little bit further down the order, and in particular to the battle for what is the lead of the silver class here on track, and it's Tom Bingham ahead of Ben Bennyworth, who you see in your camera shot for a brief moment in terms of Bingham, who is the leader there off in the distance. Bennyworth P2 ahead of David Camano and Sergio Gonzalez, but this top 4 very close together, and the KFM Motorsport red and yellow driver from the sister outfits right now working together here to try and do everything they can in order to gain the strategy. But as they make their way across the timeline and down towards turn number 1, you can definitely see now how the BMW M4 seems to be building pace in the mid portion of this race. The BMW does have a reputation for being a jack of all trades, master of none, with a little bit of straight line speed flavour to it. And well, in these longer races, the BMW can go quite strongly, whereas cars such as the Ferrari and the Lamborghini Huracan can fall away a little bit due to rear tyre degradation. Particularly in the case of the Ferrari, when this car's pushed, it can really feel the pain. But given the fact we've got relatively cool conditions here today, as we show you the weather on the top right, on the right hand side of your screen, we should say 22 degrees track temperature, 18 degrees ambient temperature, it does mean, all in centigrade, that we've got conditions where the Ferrari's not going to fill the tyre wear as much as it could potentially, so it's going to work into the advantage of our Ferrari drivers and indeed the Porsche drivers as well. But it does look as though the KFM Motorsport pair of Gonzalez and Camano are falling away a little bit from the top two of the silver class, and therefore they're going to have to try and work this one out on a strategy manoeuvre. But as they head in towards the hairpin, we look from them to Gianni Tahar. And Gianni Tahar being involved by the early instance, the Dutchman Quad Dash race. He's P9 in the gold class, but he's already taken one pit stop and he is trying to make some further headway. It's not over yet by any stretch of the imagination. We have got plenty of pit stops still playing out in the bronze class, which Davide Favo and John Meredith are both in, and they're P6, P7 currently as they exit the pit lane very shortly. And we do say hello in the YouTube chat there to Craig Tiddleston, who says, good luck in tonight's race, guys. Guide Unlock there representing FR20. Indeed, we are missing you, Craig. We hope to see you in at the next round on the grid. And then we also say hello to Jonathan Cook there, or John O'Cook, says, well, that was fun. And, well, we do have a few retirements in this race, ladies and gentlemen, and those confirmed retirements currently we can confirm as follows. It is Bobby Thompson, Jonathan Cook. Also, we believe Adam Delman may have retired, albeit we are waiting for confirmation on that. And we also do have, we believe, a retirement from Aaron Thompson. So three retirees confirmed, two of which in the gold class are Jonathan Cook and Bobby Thompson. And then we also do have one confirmed still retired, Aaron Thompson. Both the Thompson brothers there on their debuts, having a difficult day of racing. And Adam Delman in the pit lane at the moment, but they are struggling to get that car back out from as I look at my commentary booth window and what we can see going on down there. But meanwhile, as we look to Wesley Lewin, the CSA Pink driver, who is currently effectively your last place runner on the circuit, P34 out of 38 starters, just carrying on here. 2 laps down compared to the bronze leader, Sean Scudder, but knowing that anything can happen before this is all over. And well, meanwhile, we do look to 2 silver drivers who are battling for position. This is Jack Barker versus Russell Fowler. And we'll keep in mind that Barker is yet to make a strategic pit stop. Russell Fowler has been forced into a pit stop given the incident we saw earlier on. Albeit I do believe Barker is missing a good chunk in his, in fact he's missing his entire rear wing. He's got the struts there as a bit of contact in the back of him from Fowler as they make the way down for turn at number 17. Well, Fowler expecting Barker to be a bit faster out of the corner, but I would imagine the rear of that Mercedes, given the fact it's not got any rear downforce being applied to it outside the aerodynamic bodywork, the rear wing being the keystone, if you will, of getting rear downforce on the car. This is going to make that Mercedes a very sensitive car under braking at a high speed, and it will put it into turn 1, also 130R, and that's why Fowler will be very eager to try and cut his way on through it as soon as he possibly can. But as they make the way on through the S's, and meanwhile we've had a bit of drama further up the road. We have a new race leader overall, and in the gold class it's Gavan Gardener, who now found his way into lead with a 2-second advantage over Akram Tanoon, who's dropped to P2. We're not quite sure what's happened to Akram Tanoon, but we do have a replay coming up to explain the story. But whilst they all make the way on through, Miguel Gutierrez Garcia's dropped to P4 in the hunt of the lead of this race, and Tanoon's into the pit lane, so he's decided whatever's happened, it's upset him, or alternatively he's decided to go with plan A, if that was the plan in the first place. But as they make their way down towards turn number 1, we get a replay of what happened, and here's the story of what happened to your previous gold race leader. Making his way up towards the hairpin, flashes lights there to Jordan Babois, wanting to come on through, goes all in, and well, I think there the door was slightly open, but from that far back I think Zanoon was being a little bit adventurous to say the least, and well, that explains what exactly happened between the two and how Zanoon lost the position. And then he tried coming back immediately at what was Gutierrez Garcia, and here's a move into Spoon for you. Watch McCluskey out. I think McCluskey is going to pick up the places here. Zanoon comes on through, and a bit of further contact there with Gutierrez Garcia, and well, that could have been curtains for the pair of them, but it wasn't to be. So Garcia will not be too pleased about that one, as he'll feel as though he's been elbowed out. You can see the flash of lights there, and I think Zanoon just seeing a little bit of the red after the incident with Babois. And we look back to your live pictures now, ladies and gentlemen, and that explains the story. But that's why Zanoon's coming to the pit lane to give himself some space on circuit, and also I think to go hunting once more. But meanwhile, speaking of battles on circuit with your live pictures, this is Alfonso Marin looking up the inside of Barker. The 2 Mercedes tries going side by side into 130R, and well, Marin making a classic move on the inside there, albeit with Mercedes that does have a rear wing on it versus one that does not. And Marin there for KFM Motorsport Red making progress, and also 1 pit stop up on Barker. So therefore for the Spaniard it's all about gaining more time as Jack Barker makes his way into the pit lane for his first scheduled stop. And to be fair, he's been going for quite some time with no rear wing on that Mercedes, so it's testament to his ability. He's been able to avoid having to come into the pits before what we reckon is his scheduled stop. But as he comes on down now, and we meanwhile look back to what is the battle for the lead of the silver class. These guys yet to pit in the form of Ben Bennyworth is the class leader ahead of David Camano and then Sergio Gonzalez. All three of them together nose to tail. But here's the interesting part of this battle. You'll remember that Tom Bingham was leading in the silver class. He's opted to pit. He pitted only moments ago. And what that does mean is that now Bingham is on a bit of a clock here, as is Bennyworth and the two drivers behind them, in the fact that whoever pits at this point may find themselves coming up behind Bingham, or alternatively alongside or ahead, and we'll have to wait and see. But for Bingham's cause, it will be about putting in qualifying laps from this point onwards until the trio who are leading in the silver class come into the pits, and that's where Bingham will try and make the time and achieve what we call the undercut. For the uninitiated, it's when a driver comes into the pits before their rivals, when they're running close together. The idea being they can essentially leap ahead of their rivals and gain time in the race by simply pitting earlier, therefore being on fresher tyres, or simply getting themselves out of traffic or out of a high pressure situation, giving themselves clear space on track and delivering the laps. But as they make their way through turns at 5 and 6 right now, Bennyworth definitely feeling the Crest Autosport BMW that things are hooked up. And this is the strongest we've seen from Bennyworth this season so far. That's not to underestimate or undermine its performances in the first 2 rounds, but Bennyworth really enjoying the flow of the car it would seem here today at Suzuka, and it's telling in the fact that he's very comfortably holding onto space inside the top 3, leading on track currently. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out in practice in terms of where he fits into the chain once the strategy all starts to materialise and manifest. But right now Bennyworth actually doing a stellar job for the Crest Autosport team, which does have the absence of Nigel Stock today, but we do hope that Stock is able to join in the next round. And well, it's unfortunate technical issues, not seeing Stock on the grid here today in Japan. And as our drivers make their way on towards what is Spoon Curve, we do look to a growing battle in the gold class here for P4 between Gaz Williams and Jamie Dory. These two have been battling hard for some time, and albeit it was Dory ahead of Williams for the best part of the opening laps, now it's Williams ahead of Dory for these laps around. And as they make their way up towards Casio Triangle, Dory I think feeling as though he can get through, but meanwhile Williams very eager to protect the position. And I think here Williams trying to make it work on strategy. He wants Dory away from him as they make their way on down. We've had a car go round under braking into the pit lane. That's Jordan Babois. I think it was a lock-up under braking, in fact, as we are hearing the Gutierrez Garcia coming in from P3 in the gold class. But meanwhile, for P3 on circuit right now, Williams defending on the inside, left of your picture. Dory trying to go around the outside, and as they make their way down to the brakes, well, it's going to be Dory who's made to wait once again as they head on up. And as we see them make their way into the S's, we ride on board here with the McLaren MP4 12C of Jamie Dory, and just listen to that V8. And they're having to constantly balance the throttle and balance the gear selection as he makes his way out to the S's and up towards Degner 1 and Degner 2. But you can see how the Porsche is able to take the S's much more comfortably with more natural rotation on the rear axle of the car as they make their way under braking into Degner 2. This is where Dory gains. He's much stronger in the very low speed corners. Medium speed apexes, the Porsche is stronger, but as soon as we go into second gear corners and also coming down here all the way into the hairpin, that's when the McLaren is able to just gun it out the corner a bit more comfortably, albeit that time Williams getting the better exit initially, but now as they build the way through the gearbox, and the McLaren able to start to extract a brief advantage in terms of top speed. But it is brief as it is a relatively short run onto a Spoon Curve, and Williams able to hold the position for now as they make their way through the left-hander. 46 minutes into this race, still plenty of time to go, but as they come off the apex and onwards towards 130R, you can definitely see Dory on the charge here. But I do wonder right now whether he's thinking more and more about strategy, as is Williams, compared to trying to gain places on circuit, because we are one pit stop in for most drivers. We do have a pit stop still to go for a good number of drivers out on circuit, where we then look at the second stint, but we only have what is now a grand total of, I do believe, well, we do a bit of quick mathematics, 9 drivers who've yet to make a pit stop. And into the pits comes Benjamin McCluskey and also Gaz Williams. Dory goes another lap. He's absolutely extending this opening stint, as does your race leader of Gavan Gardener, so the cars can go long before they need to come in. We did say that the pit stop window for that first pit stop will be around the 30-minute through to 50-minute mark, and our estimation is being proven accurate here, as Gardner right now going into a 47th minute. By the time he gets in this lap, he'll be 48 minutes minutes in, and will making that Ferrari go long. And we do know the Ferrari can be very good on its fuel if managed well, and that's the thing about Gardner. He's not the fastest driver out there in terms of raw pace, but the one thing he does better than most is car management in that Ferrari. And as he comes on through and up towards the Degners, well, if he can carry this on, he may just find himself picking up places and potentially coming out as your leader. But as he heads on through Degner 2, meanwhile, speaking of a driver who is coming through, albeit he's got a lot of ground to make up, it's CSA Pink Stephan Wessels, who after what is his first pit stop is now P3 in the gold class, albeit we do have Jamie Dory and Gavan Gardener still out there, so we'll have to wait and see how Wessels fits into proceedings, albeit Wessels on a very different strategy compared to his rivals, as he did pit much earlier compared to when his rivals are pitted, or have pitted I should say, or are predicted to pit, and therefore that does mean here we have a couple of drivers off on a bit of an offset strategy. Now, to put you in the frame of mind, Wessels pitted on lap number 16 of this race, albeit this lap is timed, but we can just base it in terms of number of laps. Meanwhile, was for Gaz Williams, he pitted on lap 23, so Wessels is therefore 7 laps ahead, and we would expect that therefore Wessels may be having to make an extra stop. Alternatively, he's going to have a much slower second or third stint in order to make up what has been a much shorter opening stint to the race for the South African, as we can see him there overtaking the bronze leader Mark Sykes for NXTGEN Racing. And the Englishman here in the 666 Ferrari, despite the fact that he is missing the front bumper, he's still carrying on out there and he's not given up yet. So I think for Sykes, he's decided to try and go as long as possible. He's enjoying the flow of the car and the feeling of it. And well, this is the best place to go about it for the simple reason, if you're feeling comfortable with the car and all's hooked up and you've got plenty of space out of circuit, well, if it's not broken, don't fix it, as they say. But as he heads up towards 130R, the key thing for Sykes here is he just needs to not make any mistakes, because he may find himself coming on through. We reckon he's battling for a podium position, given the way things have played out. Sean Scudder is the bronze leader on strategy. He's currently P2, 41.2 seconds behind, and he is closing fast on Sykes in terms of relative lap time after the pit stop. But Sykes makes his way in between the apex to Casio triangle. We have now had some pit stops for Jamie during Gavan Gardener. Sykes comes in, just missing the grass on entry there, which can catch out everybody. And also we have into the pits Nesta Dufu and also Sergio Gonzalez. But meanwhile, coming on through there is Akram Zanoon. He makes his way past the pit exit, and that's going to be Gavan Gardener who comes on through. And well, you can see there's Zanoon gainers. Gardener comes out in P3. And the NXTGEN Racing Pink driver, well, he's gained quite a bit of time. Jamie Dory is within 3 seconds of him now. So Dory, in fact, gained the pit stop. Oh, my good lord. And Dory losing the rear of the car there in turns 1 and 2. Now, we're not quite sure whether that was his own volition or contact. But either way, that's not the way he wanted to get his second stint of this race underway at all. And with that for Jamie Dory, definitely a nightmare start to what is now coming towards the end of the first hour of racing. As meanwhile, Russell Fowler comes on through to take P7 the silver class off of this man, Nesta Dufu. The Kevin Motorsport yellow driver losing out quite considerably in the pit strategy. And well, meanwhile, the biggest gainers in the silver class would have to be one is Tristan Engelstad, albeit we do need to point out that Engelstad pitted on lap number 2, given the damage he picked up to the car early on. So we've got a car pointing the wrong way on the run on through what is there turn number 7. That's Davide Favo trying to get the CSA Blue Audi turned around, but as he makes his way back on through, the South African here just very gradually bringing the car back onto circuit, and as he makes his way up to speed, well, the 46 Audi definitely having seen some difficulty here, but he's not letting him dissuade him whatsoever, as well, he now makes his way into Degner 2 once again. But coming back to our point regarding Tristan Engelstad, whilst he may be P2 at the moment in the silver class of Quad Dash Racing, we have to keep in mind he pitted only on the second lap of this race, so he is effectively out of sync with the rest of the drivers around him. He's on the back of Tom Bingham there, but we do wonder what Engelstad can do strategy-wise in order to bring himself back into the race, because he is arguably right now a pit stop down on the likes of Bingham, Gonzalez and Bennyworth around him. So we would predict that within the next 5 to 10 minutes he will have to take a pit stop, given the fact we've seen the cars go as long as 50 minutes before taking their first pit stops. But then again, Engelstad, what he may try to do, which would be possible if he can get the car to creep towards the hour mark, he may have to drive very conservatively in what will be the next stint, and really what will be his first stint, or arguably second extended stint. But either way, if Engelstad can get the car to go long, he could try and get it long distance, but I don't think that's going to happen, as he has to come into the pits, and this will see him drop a long way down. The temptation will be there for the number 57 driver to see if he can get rid of a pit stop, but just keep in mind, given the fuel tank's gone 50 minutes, to add another 10 minutes onto the fuel tank plus the final lap, you're going to be driving a long way off the pace. But as he makes his way into the pit lane, meanwhile, we do look to Silver Drives charging on through, still battling for position. And this is Sergio Gonzalez, who's in fact jumped Ben Bennyworth in the pit lane. He's found his way on through past Bennyworth, and therefore that goes to show you on strategy just how critical it was in the fact in terms of stationary time. For Gonzalez, it was 33.43 seconds. Meanwhile, for Bennyworth, it was 34.17. So that's how they've swapped places in the pit. David Camano's still behind, but it's very small margins. And as they make their way through turn in number 7, well, right now the KFM Motorsport yellow driver, he's 6.5 seconds down on Tom Bingham, who's just running away with the silver lead. But again, Gonzalez will focus on what he needs to do here to maintain that P2, potentially close down the leader, and see what happens as the race wears on. As they make their way onwards and up towards what is the turn 11 hairpin. Meanwhile, we look to Alex Rogenbach, the privateer from Germany, right now running in P29 overall, P6 in the bronze class. And as he makes his way on down the back straight up towards 130R, enjoying a good race day so far. Lamborghini Huracan driver, one of a multitude of drivers who's definitely been involved in some early race theatrics. Indeed, he's made two pit stops so far, one for repair work to the car, the other a scheduled stop, but mixing it up with the likes of Davide Favo and also what is Jorge Santos behind him, and therefore I think Rogenbach really feeling as though the top 10 is well and truly on the cards here today. And well, if he does see any drivers in front of him in the bronze class retire, then it will be a top 5, his first of the season. With that, as we do see him being lapped there by Benjamin McCluskey, P4 gold driver on the right of your picture, as they make their way underneath the Suzuka circuit billboard and onwards towards turn number 1. As they coming down into the braking zone here, also coming through Miguel Gutierrez Garcia. And Rogenbach being very cognizant of the blue flags and deciding to let the gold class leaders just make their way on around. But as they head on through and on to what for at least Rogenbach is lap number 26, meanwhile for the race leaders is lap number 27. We do look to Stefan Albanese Senior here. It's got Russell Fowler closing in fast. And in fact, as we look back from the rear of the DRS Esports car, driven by the Italian in the number 45, we can see how Fowler, after what has been a very difficult start to the race, of course that major incident we saw earlier on, really costing him and Jonathan Cook a huge amount of time, so much so that we have seen the retirement of Cook. Meanwhile, Fowler pressing on as best he can. Fowler now trying to gain another place here, and Albanese Senior does not seem to be in a happy place right now in terms of how the car is running pace-wise. A little wobble winder coming out of turn 6 into 7, and it's those little moments which really start to unsettle you as a driver in the car, which is typically known for being quite dicey under direction change, which of course being the master of direction change, as is the art of placing the engine as far in the rear as possible. The point being here is for Albanese Senior, this is a car that does not seem to be welcoming right now. Got the pressure of one of the major silver drivers right behind you as well, it only multiplies in terms of those worries on your mind. As they make their way out to turn number 11 and charging away up to a spoon curve via 12, it looks as though Albanese able to get the best run off the corner that time around, but Fowler will be looking for it all in the straightaway all the way up towards 130R. As they come through the double left apex, the battle in this race now taking a bit of a quiet turn for a brief moment, for the simple reason we now are into the second stint, and we are seeing a lot of the gaps starting to be played out more with regards to strategy rather than battling on circuit. We will stay with the battles that we do see on circuit. That's a prize for you, ladies and gentlemen. But we are just waiting to see who has played it right and played the cards right, in particular with the pit stops. And this is looking to be a two-stop race for most drivers. Not been involved in an early incident and be forced to take an early pit stop to do repair work to the car. But meanwhile, speaking of incidents, we had an incident for Matthew Addy quite recently. We've just seen him go off the circuit, I believe at the Degners. And well, let's take a look back at what exactly happened to the number 11 driver from the United Kingdom. Coming into Degner 1, goes for plenty of apex curve there, unsettles the car to a degree, but not too much. But they're under braking into Degner 2, the rear coming round. I think in the end he had to take more speed into Degner 2 due to the raised curb here at Degner 1, and therefore he missed his braking point and had to just let the car go and try to get it to come around on the rear under braking, which he did so. But for Matthew Addy, definitely showing what happens when you get it wrong at the Degners, as then Paul Scott makes his way on through. And as we look back to the P12 silver class driver live on your screens here, meanwhile we go back to that battle for P5 in the silver class, in fact now between Albanese Senior and Russell Fowler. And as they head the way up towards Degner 1, well, we did see it from Albanese Senior's view only moments ago, and now we do ride on board here with Russell Fowler for Performance Link Esports. And the thing about the number 30 driver at this point, as he makes his way up behind and onto the brakes here, It does seem as though at this point in the race he's got a lot more pace to be deployed, but he's just not able to find a way to clear the Porsche 992 in front, and this will be a bit frustrating for the number 30 driver, given the fact that he took his first pit stop on lap number 17 versus Albanese Senior's lap 23, so he is 6 laps out of sync, but he is on course for a 2-stop strategy still. But the point being here that Fowler right now is not really in a window to take a pit stop. If we do some mental mathematics, 17 laps into the race would have had him pit approximately, would have been around the region of, if we're correct, around the 37 to 38 minute mark. So in terms of his next pit stop, if we presume that he could go about 35 to 40 minutes as a minimum stint time, to therefore make it a 40-minute stint at the end of the race, he would need to go all the way out to what would be about a minute 10 in. So he's going to have to spend at least another 13 minutes behind what is their Albanese Senior, trying to find his way on through. If he can't, then he is going to have to try and jump this on strategy. But this is going to be very painful for the Briton, just because right now he's losing race time, he's feeling it, but what he also just can't find a way to do is find his way to clear Albanese, who goes defensively into turn 1. I think Albanese here just doing this as a precaution, but it is going to compromise his line into 2, and he'll go a bit deep, but again you can see that Porsche just so much more flexible on rotation through the double right apex of turns 1 and 2 compared to the BMW, and therefore he can take these more aggressive defensive lines and not worry about as much in terms of compromised time, and in the end the time he loses is only added to what Fowler loses running behind. As they make the way on through turn number 6 into 7, that's one thing that Fowler will not want to be seeing, and that is the car that's experiencing latency issues as Albanese gets a poor run out of 7. This could be Fowler's opportunity. He's going to have to go win, but Albanese sees it and defends it well into Degner 1. Albanese definitely feeling that pressure behind as Fowler tucks in once again as they head up towards the hairpin. Well, I think Fowler at this point may be thinking, can I send it from quite far back? And well, the answer is you can, but there's got to be a lot of space for you to operate with, and the driver's got to be willing to let it go. And as they make their way out of the hairpin, well, Fowler decides against it. I think a smart move there for the simple reason, if we know one thing about Albanese Senior, is he can defend extremely well, and he's one of the fairest defenders out there on the grid. As they make the way up through the right-hander 12 and into Spoon once more. Definitely an interesting situation brewing here as Fowler running a bit wide there in the first part of Spoon on exit. That's going to cost him further time and also put some dirt on the tyres. Very fortunate not to have the car jump off the curb. And as they make the way on the back straight, Fowler right now definitely I think having to try and think about switching things up. Perhaps he'll go into fuel saving mode and try to get that second pit stop a little bit earlier than originally planned. But meanwhile, we look to P4 in the bronze class, having just made his way around Degner 2, and he's gone around with the rear end of the Porsche 992. It's Daniel Fritz, Whiskey Runners Racing, the Australian getting it wrong, it would seem, but running quite a comfortable P4 in class at the moment, albeit Jordan Baybois is the best part of 15 seconds behind, and Baybois is trying to close as rapidly as he can, but Fritz right now in a bit of a no-man's land. With Elwin Sykes being 15 seconds up the, well, in fact not 15 seconds up the road, we do the match 22 seconds up the road, so therefore Fritz right now focusing on what is a potential P4 in the bronze class, but he makes his way on through Spoon Curve. Meanwhile, we do look from Daniel Fritz to another driver who's trying to get his way back into proceedings. And that's Alex Rogenbach here as he chases after Paul Scott, who's recently just come out of the pit lane, currently taking what is his second pit stop of the day. So therefore Rogenbach right now, no, he's not quite on the same race strategy as Paul Scott, and therefore you would expect Paul Scott just to gradually break away into distance as we make our way into the second hour of this race at Suzuka. But as we do clear the hour mark, it's a good time for us to give you a recap of how the standings are in terms of the classes. And we start off then with the Gold class. And your overall race leader and current Gold class leader, albeit by 6.7 seconds, is none other than Stephan Wessels, as the CSA Racing Pink driver makes his way through 130R. Now the 27 driver from South Africa has had a very interesting opening half of the race in the fact that he did pit on lap number 16, whereas the final pit stop lap that we saw from our drivers was lap number 24. So what does that mean in terms of strategy? Well, it means that Wessels right now is running a more aggressive strategy, at least for the opening stint, and now the question is, will he extend this second stint to therefore give himself a bit more spread in the final two stints in terms of this stint and stint number 3, which will see him wrap up the race, or will he decide to elongate this stint as much as possible and therefore give himself a qualifying stint right at the end? We reckon that given that Wessels' approach to the races that we've typically seen, he is most likely going to try now to extend the second stint, given the fact he has got a gap to play with, but he is holding on to that track position quite nicely for CSA Pink. And while the pace is going, he's definitely right now really hammering home the point as to why he is leading in the Gold Class Championship. And well, with that in mind, we then come to the P2 driver, 7 seconds behind up at Kremzanoon, the privateer, who has been in a couple of contentious moments, which we saw earlier, but beyond those, he's done an absolutely stellar race thus far. And as he makes his way up towards Degner 1, the number 94 driver definitely on a hunt here for one of his best performances of the season after starting in a bit of a difficult manner, dropping down the order. He's made his way up into P2, and on the strategy, he's right in the middle ground in terms of when drivers did pit for their first pit stops. So the Mercedes-AMG Evo driver has given himself plenty of options, and he has an advantage of what is 1.3 seconds over third place driver Gavan Gardener for NXTGEN Racing League, who's not been the fastest driver out there, but he's been consistent and he's also made strategy work. Going the longest, one of the joint longest in the opening stint at 24 laps, going up to the 50-minute mark, and therefore for Gavan Gardener, we're now waiting to see whether his race pace will start to advance and become faster in the next two stints, as he can make those stints a bit shorter by comparison with the first stint. However, he has an advantage of what is 2 seconds almost to Benjamin McCluskey, that we see here, P4 for NXTGEN Racing, the Porsche 992. And McCluskey really has been the silent but deadly driver here, in the fact that he has made strategy work for the most part, and trying to go as long as possible, much like the likes of Gardner, but with the Porsche 992 driver is not quite able to match the pace of the top three, and therefore we do wonder whether the 28 driver is holding something in reserve right now that may be able to pull a surprise in the second pit stop, and what will be his final pit stop of the day, but we'll have to wait to find out whether that actually is the case. But he has an advantage of 2 seconds to Miguel Gutierrez Garcia, and the Spaniard, the privateer, has absolutely shown his pace here today, albeit he's been involved in a couple of incidents which he would argue are not his fault. Well, that'll go to the stewards room after the race, and with that he was running in the podium places, but after being knocked off circuit for a brief moment, that has dropped him to a degree down the order, but he's now finding himself making his way back up the order. Oh, goodness me, as that's at Kremzanoon, who has gone round on the exit of turn 2. We believe he's had an off track from what I'm hearing in my ear, and he is gradually trying to find the car back onto circuit, as the 94 driver does. That's a very unfortunate moment, and the Mercedes driver there, we will try and get a replay of what happened very shortly, but now knowing that all that advantage he's created for himself, he's now got to try and refine, and he's going to have to make plenty of overtakes here if he wants to be back on the podium before this is all said and done. So with that in mind, that does mean now that Gaz Williams has been moved up to P5 for NXTGEN Racing, and as he makes his way up through the double right at Degner 1 and Degner 2, Gaz Williams had great pace in the opening stint, but it seems to have fallen by the wayside after what's a nasty incident between himself and Chris Shorter in the run through Casio Triangle. And that incident really has led to Williams being on the back foot and trying to find his way back into the hunt as this race has gone on. But as he makes his way out of the hairpin and up towards what is the spoon curve, we then do have Kremzanoon at P6 we only talked about moments ago, and then P7 Jamie Dory, who is a further 3 seconds behind, and the NXTGEN Racing driver here is the McLaren MP412C, was leading this race early on, decided to go as long as possible, doing 24 laps on the opening stint, much like Gavan Gardener, but a spin as soon as he came out the pit lane has cost him dear, and with that spin, now he's trying to get his way back inside the top 5, but not quite on the pace compared to his peers in this second stint, and therefore it does look as though that top 5 finish is all going to come down to what will be a much more aggressive final stint in this race if the pace is there with the driver. And then coming on to P8 in the gold class, and the best part of the lap down his peers, Johnny Tarr for Quad Dash Racing, involved in a nasty incident on the open laps, which did see him have to make an early pit stop. When the Mercedes-AMG Evo driver not giving up in it to win it, but definitely feeling that it's now been about the leader on the lap down group of drivers, which also does include Victor Chamorro, as we see the KFM Motorsport yellow driver here from Spain, also involved in an open lap incident, and therefore out of sync of the pit stops of his peers and being a lap down here, trying to bring home P9 as a minimum. We then do have in the pit lane both Matt Shorter and Chris Shorter. We believe that Matt Shorter currently on a pit stop. He has just come in for what is his second strategic stop of the day, and with that also with his third pit stop overall. And you can see that just in front of him Chris Shorter, who's been towed to the pits, and well, in fact, has he been towed to the pits? I think he's just driven into the pits, in fact, and since then both drivers in cars that do not seem to be going out of the pit lane. In fact, Matt Shorter involved in an incident only moments ago, and let's take a look back at what happened. The CSA green driver just running out of drive by the sounds of things there, coming through turn number 7. Oh, I think there either he's run out of fuel or something's broken on the car, but he's just had to be towed to the pit lane. So the shorter bros definitely having a difficult day at the office, and well, I think it may be an early retirement for the two of them. And then when speaking of retirements, we had the retirements of was Adam Delmont, Jonathan Cook and Bobby Thompson, and well, that explains your order in the gold class. But as we then do look to the silver class here, it is currently Tom Bingham who leads the way. He's leading in P1 for Performance Esports by an advantage of 2.1 seconds over what is Sergio Gonzalez. And Tom Bingham really has been the driver to beat here thus far, albeit we are starting to see a bit of an interesting scenario creep in that Tom Bingham really has gone for the undercut to hold on to lead this race. At one point he did have an advantage. He did have an advantage of 4 seconds. That gap has been brought down very gradually by Sergio Gonzalez to now 2.3 seconds. But Bingham here doing everything he can. But we do know with his undercut, he'll have to either pit early and have a longer final stint compared to Gonzalez, or alternatively, he may now be trying to turn the width down to extend this mid-stint and therefore give himself options for that final stint. But Bingham definitely making early ground, but can he maintain that ground in the long term? That's the big question. Sergio Gonzalez at P2 for KFM Motorsport Yellow, running a very strong race thus far, going on to P2 and gradually matching and closing down what is Bingham. In fact, on that last lap, Gonzalez a 2-minute flat .83, Bingham a 2:01.79. That gap is swinging the way of Gonzalez. I think Gonzalez right now really leveraging the fact that he went longer. He went 5 laps longer compared to Bingham, and it's showing in the fact that now he can really up the ante on the car. Meanwhile, Bingham may just be trying to sip at the fuel a little bit and also save the tyres. We then have Ben Bennyworth, who we see here in P3 for Crest Autosport, on one of his best performances of the season thus far. And the 96 driver missing out versus Gonzalez in terms of the pit stops, but at the same time, what has worked out for Bennyworth is he's consolidated P3 so far, albeit he has got growing pressure from this man behind. KFM Motorsport Red's David Camano, the Spaniard here, not quite able to jump Bennyworth in the pit lane, but he was able to close the gap up, and the gap now standing on average at 9/10 to a whole second. And it'll be interesting to see how the BMW M4 and Lamborghini Huracan Evo drivers come together as this race continues to evolve towards its closure. Then we do have in P5 Russell Fowler, and Russell Fowler having to do things the hard way after a nasty incident which saw him drop all the way down the order earlier on. And right now the number 30 driver making its way up the order as rapidly as he can, albeit he has pitted very early, pitted on lap number 17. Is going to all be about for him what he's now trying to hound and hustle that car on around. But he has to keep in mind that therefore he is going to have to take pit stops earlier, and that final stint may be a much longer one by comparison with his peers, where he won't have as much pace available to him. But he's doing well to recover. He's 10 seconds off the leader, 3 seconds off David Camano, and he is definitely showing that right now he has got pace to match the leader of Tom Bingham. Then we do have Lee Horn in P6, and recently made his way into this position. The NXTGEN Racing driver in the 36 Porsche 992. A bit of a no man's land, not quite on the pace of the top 5, but running in a world of his own here as he makes his way on around. But in fact, to say that about not having pace for the top 5, he is in fact matching, if not exceeding the pace of the top 5 over the last couple of laps. I'm being made to mark my words as we look back for our data, and will Lee Horn at this time, I think, just getting into the rhythm here and trying to hunt down a top 5 finish, and it is an opportunity given the fact he's only 4 seconds off of Fowler, and there's plenty of time still left in this race. We then have Stefan Albanese Senior running P7 in class. He's recently been passed by Russell Fowler. In fact, we need to take a look back at how that move was made. In fact, we can get a replay of it, and this is what happened between Russell Fowler and Stefan Albanese. Was they made the way into Degner 1. Well, Albanese losing the rear of the car there, going through the Degner. I think just a bit too much speed and pressure for the Italian, and the car going on around. An unfortunate moment there, but again, Fowler putting the pressure on it very well, and Albanese getting himself back together there. But that's what caused the place swap between the two of them. In fact, Lee Horn also getting on through to take the place of Albanese Senior for DRS Esports. Well, up until that mistake was running a very solid race in P5 in the silver class, but that mistake has cost him, puts him in P7. But again, he could come back strong here. He's not quite been on the pace of the top 5, but still he's running consistently, and therefore he's not to be underestimated. P8, Tristan Engelstad for Quad Dash Racing. This driver has definitely had perhaps the most difficult race of them all in the silver class, for the simple reason he had to come into the pits on the second lap, and well, since then he's really been trying to chase down what is a missing pit stop, of which he has taken his first strategic pit stop of the day, and was lap number 25, so therefore only one lap longer compared to those who were trying to go as long as possible without an incident early on in the race. And Engelstad right now knowing that he is against the clock, but he is lapping quickly. In fact, he is the fastest silver class driver out there. He is passing the pace of anybody else, and well, he has got a gap currently of 23 seconds to close down versus Albanese, but never say never. Given the fact he's got 50 minutes to go plus the final lap, Engelstad could be in with an outside chance of gaining a couple more places, but he'll be reliant on mistakes from his rivals just as much as he will his pace in the Mercedes AMG. Then we do have in P9 in the silver class, Nesta Duflu, who right now, the KFM Motorsport yellow driver, involved in an incident a few laps ago, cost him dear and made him take his second pit stop early, and therefore the number 34 driver trying to get his way back into the silver class battle for the top 5, but I think here it might be battling for the remnant places inside the top 10, but still can't take away from the fact he did have a very solid first stint, as did this man, Matthew Addy, who right now making his way onwards towards 130R. The NXTGEN Racing driver completes the top 10, just not quite being on the pace compared to his peers, and a couple of mistakes in the second stint have cost him very dear as he makes his way up towards Casio Triangle. Outside the top 10 of the silver class, we have Alfonso Marin, the KFM Motorsport red driver, who right now ran a bit of a lonely race here. He is 1 minute 26 seconds of the leaders. He's being flashed by Gianni Taha. And as they make their way up towards 130R, well, right now for Alfonso Marin, it's all about just trying to get the car home and see if he can pick up any points, if any drivers retire, alternatively have any major incidents towards the end of the race. And the same for Jack Barker, the last of the silver drivers on the lead lap of the class, with the made for a racing driver here, running behind Miguel Gutierrez Garcia. He is a lap down now on the gold leaders, but the number 6 driver, after losing his rear wing on the first stint, decided to go all the way to the end without repairing the rear wing, which is credit to the fact he's running with a car with very little rear downforce on it to keep the rear settled. But Barker definitely doing things the hard way and trying to keep his cool and carry on. And then last but not least, in the silver class, out on circuit, a lap down, Paul Scott here, who has made 2 stops, albeit one of his stops being due to an incident on circuit. He has had to have repair work done on the car, but the NXTGEN Racing red driver not giving up whatsoever and still waiting to see if any more places come his way. We have had one retirement in the silver class. That was the debutant of Aaron Thompson, involved in an early incident. Very unfortunate Aaron Thompson. We hope to see more of him as the season goes on. And then we do come on to the bronze class, with Sean Scudder leading the way right now, with an advantage that is only growing more and more each and every time we check, with the CSA Racing Blue driver now 30 seconds clear of Elwin Sykes and absolutely storming away in terms of pace. The only driver in class that is matching him is Jordan Baybois, but when Baybois is 56.5 seconds behind due to incidents, and an incident which was not in any way something that Baybois could have avoided, the nasty one between the Formula Link esports drivers of what was Jonathan Cook and also Russell Fowler, and then Baybois just being in the wrong place at the wrong time coming out of turn number 7. Scooter right now just running away with this race unchallenged, with then Elwin Sykes P2 for CSA Green, and the South African driver here having a very strong race, not putting a foot wrong thus far, and indeed running on a similar strategy to Scooter, albeit the difference being that Sykes did pit 4 laps beforehand, and therefore he's gone for a more aggressive strategy in the early stage of this race. It will come back to bite him, of course, in the latter stages, but he would argue that his 16-second advantage over this man, Daniel Fritz, will keep him safe. Speaking of Daniel Fritz, Whiskey Runners Racing, the Australian here, running in a smooth P3 at the moment. He is currently the best part of 11 seconds clear of Jordan Baybois, but Baybois is closing, and he is closing fast. On average, a second to 1.5 seconds a lap is the rate of closure. So therefore, Fritz will be aware of the fact that Baybois is coming and could be with him within the next 10 laps. And well, Fritz right now, even if he just takes the top 5 today, he'll definitely get shown he's earned it on merit. With Jordan Baybois, meanwhile, leading the bronze class for quite some time, and then being involved in an incident that he came into the scene of and couldn't really see it happening until it occurred. Well, the Frenchman right now trying to do everything he can to recover to a podium finish, as he is the bronze championship leader, and well, he'll want to maintain his favourite status and try to break away at the front of the field. Then we do have a lap down running P5 in the bronze class. Alex Rogenbach, as we see him making his way up towards 130R. And the privateer from Germany here, really picking up the pieces where others have lost out, made mistakes, been involved in incidents, and sometimes that's what it's all about. He's not been on the pace compared to his rivals. For the most part, he has been a second down compared to the top 5 of the bronze class, but still doing everything right here in the number 70 Lamborghini Huracan Evo and enjoying the race, and it looks like he makes his way onto another lap. Behind him, Davide Favo, who sits approximately what is the best part of 35, in fact 40 seconds, we can correct that now. And the CSA blue driver here in the Audi R8 has had a difficult race thus far. A couple of nasty incidents have cost him very dear, but still trying to get himself back in the rhythm to try and take a P6 finish when it's all said and done, with what is Jorge Santos P7. And well, the privateer here in number 55 Audi. It's been a difficult race, and open that instant cost him dear, and then a further couple of instants later on costing him time. But he's still out there on circuit, keeping that P7 position ahead of Mark Sykes, who's recently had to come into the pits due to damage picked up on the car. I believe Mark Sykes involved in a nasty incident on circuit, as we do see him parked up there in the pit lane. And the same with John Meredith. Meanwhile, that's Gianni Tahar, and that's Tristan Engelstein into the pit lane, who's taking repair works. We've had a couple of incidents we're going to need to have a look back at very shortly. In fact, we can take a look back at what happened to Mark Sykes. We believe Mark Sykes and Tristan Engelstein may have both been involved in a collective instance, and as we see the replay here, Sykes going into turn 1, rear of the car lets go and goes deep. He corrects it, but then it comes fully around, and Engelstein comes into the scene of the incident, and that leads to Engelstein's front bumper coming off, and where Engelstein having no way to avoid the stricken Ferrari of Sykes. A very unfortunate moment for the pair of them, and Sykes hitting that tyre barrier in the end. I think that's what's led to the tow to the pits. As we return to your live pictures, we can see Wesley Lewin still out on circuit, 2 laps down on his bronze class peers, and right now doing everything he can to try and finish this race and gain some key points for CSA Pink. And as he comes towards the timing line, it is going to be a charge on towards what will be a P8 in class now. Mark Sykes losing a place, and Lewin here doing well, keeping it calm. He's not had the happiest of races, to be fair. He's had 4 pit stops so far, 2 of them for major incidents. In fact, we believe 3 of them for major incidents, but still number 39 driver keeping a positive spirit. And then we do have, last but not least, in P10 is John Meredith with repair work ongoing to the car. And in fact, we can take a look back what happened to the Meredith racing driver with a replay, and here it is. So as he was making his way into Degner 1, misses the curb there, and the rear of the car, you can see it started to let go, a bit too much steering lock as he turned on him with the speed, and the rear of the Porsche stepping out and knocked to the barrier. Car stops, and he tries to get it turned, but at this point, well, it is a wounded car, and he was going to try and get it to the pit lane, but I believe there was a further incident afterwards, and I think, in fact, he may have got the call from his race engineer to park the car. You can see the suspension there, not pointing in a straight line, the steering with it, and for Meredith, it was very quickly after that a visit to the pits. And that's a recap of how the field currently stands, ladies and gentlemen. Out of 38 starters, we still have running out on circuit a grand total of 33 tries, as we understand it. And in terms of battles that are ongoing, we come back at perfect time here to see David Camano and Russell Fowler get in very close-knit to one another. We are hearing that there was an incident for Stephan Albanese Senior, which has cost him very dear. In fact, you saw that earlier on. And Albanese Senior now down all the way in P13 in the silver class. In fact, I think there's been a further incident for Albanese Senior since we last looked back. I'll have to take a look back at that very shortly. But with that in mind, will David Camano and Russell Fowler nose to tail here as they make their way up towards 130R. 40 minutes plus the final lap still on the clock, and we are now starting to see the first final pit stops in terms of strategy. That second stop of your Stephan Wessels is in the pit lane. As I look out my commentary booth window, Daniel Fritz has just left the pit lane, P4 bronze. Wessels came within the lead of the gold class. That's going to be an important one for him. And also we have had a pit stop quite recently. We do believe, as Matt Shorter has in fact left the pit lane as well, we have had a pit stop for Matthew Addy and also Stephan Albanese Senior, albeit we believe that's for repair work on the car just as much as it is a strategic pit stop. So therefore we are encroaching now into that final pit stop territory. As Wessels finds his way out the pit lane, he puts himself right between the battle for P4 in the silver class. So David Camano will be very happy with the fact that Wessels now is acting as a little bit of a buffer. But the problem here for Kamano is in the fact that when Wessels gets up to speed, he'll very quickly want to pick his way through. Because for Wessels, every second he now spends behind the silver tyres is going to cost him very dear, and he's brought himself out into a bit of a traffic jam as he makes his way through turn number 7, trying to get the car up to speed as rapidly as possible. But as he charges on towards deck number 1, Fowler there very close. I think Russell Fowler is going to think about making a move in. No, he does not in actuality, but the key point being that right now Wessels definitely has found himself in a bit of a hot seat position. He was leading by a good few seconds, approximately 7 seconds when he came into the pit. So therefore he's going to have to lose quite some significant time in order to lose the effective lead of this race. But when you're in these traffic jam situations, you never know what can happen. And meanwhile, looking from Wessels to the front of the field runner Gavan Gardener, he's got Benjamin McCluskey, who has closed up quite rapidly over the last couple of laps. It does look so now McCluskey on a mission here to go on the offensive, and will that last lap for Gardner at 59.91, McCluskey at 59.68, so it is a couple of attempts between the two of them as they make their way into turn 1 out the pit lane. It does come that short, so the repair work has been done to the car, and as the drivers make their way on through the right-hander of what is their turn at number 2 up towards 3, well, Gardner here will be just hoping that McCluskey is playing the longer-term game here, which is to get the two of them to work together and therefore potentially jump Stephan Wessels through the pit strategy rather than battle each other. Because if they battle each other now, then Wessels will effectively retake the lead of this race all the way to the very end. Given the fact that whilst he may be in traffic at the moment, he's not going to mind it if these two are fighting and taking time off of each other. But speaking of Stephan Wessels, we see he has closed up to the back of what is there, David Kamano, and as they make the way down towards turn number 1, it's going to be a classic move on the inside here for Wessels. Kamano's not going to fight it. They're in 2 different classes and 2 different entire races, and therefore Wessels is able to pick his way through. It won't cost him as much time as it would have if they battled for the position. It will still cost him a little bit of time, and Wessels will be aware of that, but it, hopefully for him, in his mind, will make him feel as though that in fact he's not losing that much time in the overall race. As meanwhile into the pits has come Russell Fowler, so he's decided to come in early in order to try and leap for Kamano and also Ben Bennyworth. We'll have to wait and see how that works out for Fowler, given the fact that we'll put him on course to finish the final stint of this race quite comfortably. In fact, he's leaving the pit box now as I look out my commentary booth window, and with that we've also got Elwin Sykes in. Sykes coming in from P2 of the bronze class, so more and more pit stops now starting to come to bear, and well, Ben Bennyworth here all up the band. There's a bit of contact with Wesley Lewin, and with that it's going to see Lewin letting go of the car. Bennyworth lets the car go deep, and as he does, well, meanwhile it's going to be Daryl Kamano who tries to come through. I think Bennyworth there being caught out by what was the early braking on Lewin and the lack of speed through the corner. But Kamano not able to capitalise on a very odd situation there as they make their way into what is the spinning curve. You can see David Kamano right now still in the chase here as they make their way through the long left-hander, and as they do, with the 22 driver here, I think will be ruined what was a missed opportunity. But also what we'll be pleased about is the fact it's not picked up any damage to the car. We will know now that Bennyworth has got some front aero damage, and that may cost Bennyworth his straight line speed advantage, which the BMW M4 versus the Lamborghini is known for. But as they make their way through 130R, we'll have to wait to see what that damage does to the way Bennyworth approaches this race, and whether it potentially brings forward a pit stop for him in this battle for the final spot of the silver podium is where to understand it. As meanwhile, Tom Bingham makes his way into the pit lane, but meanwhile Bennyworth and Kamano do not, and neither does this man, Sergio Gonzalez, who goes on to retake the lead of the silver class race for a period of time, albeit we believe it's Bingham's to lose based on strategy. But Gonzalez again will be happy to know he's up front and right now leading a couple of laps of racing here in Japan. But as he makes his way through the S's, and meanwhile we look to one driver who's trying to recover his way out through the order, and it's the gold P7 driver Akram Zanoon, who chasing after Sean Scott, the bronze leader. Flashes lights there to say to Scooter, look, just let me go. And well, Scooter turning in there, Zanoon taking a little peek to the inside, and in the end making it clear that he is coming through as they make their way through turn 1 into 2. And well, a standard move there from Akram Zanoon, and Scooter being aware of the fact they're in 2 different races and therefore does not need to fight it, albeit Scooter I think on the one hand might have liked to finish P10 overall, but now he's down to P11. I don't think he's going to mind it, given the fact it would only have been pride on the line, nothing more, nothing less. As we look back here to the battle for P6 in the silver class, keeping in mind that Nesta Delfu and also Russell Fowler have both taken 2 stops, albeit we believe that Fowler has now completed his pit stops to the end of the race. Delfu and meanwhile has taken 1 pit stop very early, so therefore he may be on the boundary of being able to get to the end, but we would expect Fowler to gradually break away from the Gavan Motorsport yellow driver as they make their way up through the sweepers of the S's, and you see that Delfu going a bit deep through 6, and that's going to compromise his line into 7. And Fowler already starting to break away. As we look from them back to your race leaders here in the gold class, and overall Gavan Gardener and Benjamin McCluskey, we ride on board and look back from the rear of the Ferrari 418 Evo driver, and while McCluskey continues to follow and give chase. As they continue their way up through the winding of the S's, it's interesting again to see how Gardener and McCluskey very similar on pace at this point in the stint, albeit McCluskey the fastest of the 2 drivers as we understand it, but once he's this close now really moving into a bit more of a fuel saving mode. It's new fastest lap of the race, overall in gold class, Stephan Wessels a 59.171. Wessels is absolutely flying right now out there. He's found clear track, to be fair to him, and therefore he's given it everything. He's got the next driver that he's going to encounter is Sergio Gonzalez, who's 3 seconds up the road from him, the silver leader, albeit Gonzalez is due for a pit stop sometime soon. So I think Wessels right now has timed this right, albeit it was a little bit precarious at first in terms of what he saw around him, but now Wessels is putting it all together, and with that, only time will tell now whether Gardner and McCluskey can find a response as they make the way through Spoon Curve here, and McCluskey I think really trying to do all the fuel saving he can and just gain the strike line speed of the Ferrari in terms of the toe on the extended straights as they make the way on towards 130R once again, but there's nothing between these two. I think it is being dictated by McCluskey right now, who's comfortable sitting in the toe and focusing on the strategy element rather than the battling on circuit element of this race. There's a time and a place for everything, and right now, for McCluskey, it's all about sitting behind as they roll the way through Casio Triangle and towards the end of the lap. Will one of them defect to the pits? Well, it does not look like it. They both stay out there once more as they make the way onto what is lap number 44 for the pair. But as they make the way down towards turn number 1, meanwhile we look to Tristan Engelstad, the driver continues to pick his way through the field, and right now going hunting after Alfonso Marin. This is for the silver class position. They're battling for P18 class, the battle of the Mercedes drivers here, and Engelstad getting a very good run out of 17 onto another lap. He's not quite close enough, however, to try and force the move into turns 1 and 2, albeit I think Marin right now is going to be very wary of the fact that he'll be wondering where on earth has Engelstad come from. Well, he's come from the past, and he's charging into the present, if not the future, as they make the way into 3 and 4. But as they do, it's one wide here, all the way up the wind, and therefore for Engelstad, it's going to be all about just keeping the car in close proximity and looking for the move a bit later on in this race. As we're hearing, there's been another incident for Stefan Albanese senior. He's had to be told to the pit lane again, sadly, and that's going to drop him all the way down to P30 overall, P30 in the silver class. But as we look at Engelstad here, making his way behind Marin, we jump on board with the Mercedes AMG Evo 2020 driver and the Quad Dash racing car. They're absolutely blasting it out of the Degner as we head up towards the hairpin, and let's listen in. Wonderful sound there of a 6.3 litre V8 naturally aspirated Mercedes engine going absolute hammer and tongs as they make their way up towards Spoon Curve at turn number 13, and Marin they're getting a bit deep on the brake, and Engelstad getting close for comfort as they make their way through the left-hander of the second part of Spoon. Now will that potentially precipitate a move here on the back straight? Well, Engelstad's not close enough. If so, gap 210 still as they make their way past the alternate start-finish straight, and as they head up towards 130R. Right now, nose to tail they charge. And the key point being here, Engelstad comes wearing in the dirt here, and Marin feeling the pressure as they head into Casio Triangle onto the brakes. A bit of gravel there across the circuit. Marin goes deep once more. Engelstad in the wrong place at the right time for Marin just to simply hold firm, and Engelstad all over the back of him but he's just not quite closing at the right point on the circuit to be able to go on the offensive. Now the gap is 2 tenths here as they make their way down towards turn number 1, but it's staying there as they make their way into the trail braking zone. Engelstad's so close, he can reach out and touch the rear wing of his rival, but the problem is right now he's just not at the right point of the lap, getting close enough. And as they make their way up the hill, where Engelstad, after he makes this move, if he can find it, it is then going to be a 40-second gap to Nesta Durfu. So I think this might be the end of Engelstad's charge through the field, unless there's any other moments that occur, and luck needs to come his way. But still, he'll feel as though he wants to get this P8 as a minimum today. As they make the way on upwards through turn number 7. Meanwhile, we do have David Camano here and Lee Horn who have come together over the last couple of laps, and we're not quite sure as to how this has come about, given the fact that Camano was at one point lapping quite comfortably ahead of Lee Horn. But we are looking at the lap time data between the two of them. That will appear on your screen very shortly, and it does look as though that with regards to the two drivers, it is Lee Horn who's really come alive. And in fact there we can see on the last couple of laps, Horn has just been delivering the laps by comparison, lapping on certain points a whole second faster, if not at least 7 tenths faster. So that explains how these two have come together, and to articulate that in terms of the time delta between them, there you go, you can see it's come down from what was on lap 39 at 3.6 seconds all the way down to 3 tenths of a second. But as they make the way up towards what is the hairpin now, well, Horn is on a mission to try and get onto the podium here today in Japan, but the key point being that these two will be offset by the pit stop of Tom Bingham and Ben Binniworth and Russell Fowler. So therefore they've got to be careful about the fact if they battle too hard, they may cost one another a chance at a podium, if not just the top 5, as they make their way up towards Spoon Curve. They've got a little bit of traffic in front of them in the form of Stephan Wessels, albeit that traffic's not going to bother them too much, as they expect Wessels to break away. But as they come through the left hand of Spoon and onwards towards 130R, we can see Matthew Addy a lap down, just watching on behind in the P11 Silver Class portion on the 2, in the fact that these two right now a lap ahead of him, and therefore it would be fruitless in order to unlap himself at this stage in the race. But with 29 minutes on the clock, 1 lap after that, of course, for the final lap, our drivers right now all charging on around here, getting ready for their second pit stop, so they haven't already made them. We are still waiting for the trigger to be pulled on those pit stop speed, which David Camano comes into the pit lane, and that releases what is Lee Horn to make his way across the timeline here up to P2 on track at least. We believe this may be worth P3, P4 out on the circuit, depending on how it plays out versus Camano. But Horn coming alive in this race now, albeit not the fastest silver driver out there. That accolade going to Tom Bingham at the moment, who did pit early and therefore is trying to undercut his way back into the win of this race. But as Horn makes his way up for the S's, he'll know his time's now to strike, given the fact he's got clear track in front of him, he's got clear track behind him, and therefore he needs to try and get the jump here on circuit versus Camano. But meanwhile, as they make their way on around here on alternate strategies, we look to Russell Fowler, who has, in all intents and purposes, come up behind Ben Bennyworth. So he has closed up behind the Crest Autosport drivers, the Performance Link Esports BMW. It's the battle of the BMWs here as they make their way down towards turn 1. And look at them, they have to do a picture. That's David Camano who comes out behind. And that goes to show you just how much time will Bennyworth and Fowler have made versus Camano, as now they jump back ahead, and that is crucial towards the end. That means Lee Horn right now, if he's not aware of this, he will be very shortly, in the fact that with what is Bennyworth and Fowler clearing Camano, Horn right now is expected to potentially come out of the back of this train, and we have got an absolute recipe for brilliant battling at the end of this race of the Silver Class, as we could effectively have a 4-way fight to be on the podium. And meanwhile, whilst all this is playing out, we've got pit stop side look out my content booth window for Benjamin McCluskey and Gaz Williams there in. So is Shani Tahar, all in the gold class there, and well, with that in mind, Wesley Lewin and Mark Sykes in the pits as well. So it is all unfolding rapidly at speed, which there is Gaz Williams in the pit lane, Benjamin McCluskey behind him as all the drivers park up. Gavan Gardener carries on through, but meanwhile, here's the big guy who everyone is worried about. Is Stephan Wessels, who makes his way on down towards turn number 1. McCluskey is leaving the pit lane. This is going to be close between Wessels and McCluskey. McCluskey on the left of your picture, but Wessels has got this done, or has he, as they make their way into turn 1, and he's done it by literally a hair's width, as Sergio Gonzalez comes on through as well, albeit Gonzalez yet to take his final pit stop. But McCluskey will be absolutely kicking himself for the simple reason, whilst he did undercut Wessels' strategy by 10 seconds in the pit lane, that's how much time McCluskey has made up. He has been fuel saving an absolute plethora so over the course of his 2 stints. It has not worked out for McCluskey, and it means that Wessels now is on course to potentially take this race to the finish, unless Gavan Gardener can find a way to jump out ahead of Wessels. But well, McCluskey, we did reckon, was the ultimate fuel saver in the gold class, so whatever Gardner's done, it's going to come close to McCluskey, but I don't think it's going to be enough. But we'll wait and see, time will tell, as meanwhile Lee Horn leaves the pit lane, P2 at the time in the silver class, as he comes on down. We can see this, look at your right of your picture, that's Pennyworth and Fowler, and then behind that's Kamano, and Horn is going to come out behind all this. Kamano has fallen away, and as they make the way into turns 1 and 2, Lee Horn right now be absolutely gutted, much like Kamano, that he's done everything he can in order to jump Pennyworth and Fowler. Had much longer second pit stops by comparison with the amount of fuel they're using. This is going to show the drivers who are going longer on the first and second stint, they're going longer with the intention of fuel saving as much as they possibly can, and that is giving them about 5 to 10 seconds in the pits on this second pit stop. And with that in mind, Horn now is going to have to go for broke if he wants to try and take this win, or at least this podium we should say, given the fact that Sergio Gonzalez has yet to pit for his second pit stop. So that means really it is Tom Bingham who leads in the silver class ahead of Ben Pennyworth, with Russell Fowler wrapping up the podium and Lee Horn just outside the podium. Our prediction that he was battling for P4 was correct, and as they make the way up towards the turn 11 hairpin, with David Kamano who get into this fight, we will have a brilliant four-way fight for the final 2 spots of the podium here. Gonzalez is into the pits, we should point out as well, so now it's all going to occur in the fact that we've got Pennyworth here still keeping Fowler at bay, but as they make the way up towards a smooth curve into left-hand they go. Well, it's going to be Pennyworth who holds the authority here, but Fowler getting closer and closer with each and every pass, and I wouldn't be surprised if Fowler is now starting to do a little bit of mental analysis, seeing where Pennyworth is potentially weakening, way stronger, and starting to set up a potential move for after the pit stop from Gonzalez. He won't want to fight right now because they want Gonzalez to potentially come out and interrupt this battle, but speaking of which, Sergio Gonzalez leaving his pit box. Is a long run down from there, but as he makes his way on down, where is Bingham? Well, Bingham's coming on through. Gonzalez is going to take the lead of this race. Gonzalez has jumped ahead on strategy with a pit stop was only 21 seconds, but there's the gap. That's Bingham in the rear of your picture, and as Gonzalez comes on down, Tom Bingham has dropped to P2. Well, my goodness, we never thought that was going to happen. That is a piece of strategic mastery from Gonzalez. Meanwhile, Pennyworth defending on the inside into turn 1. Fowler looking around the outside, can't quite find it, but how Gonzalez has pulled off that. He has undercut, in fact, he's overcut his way, where he's gone longer than everybody else on both occasions in the silver class, and he has led what is effectively a 6-second strategic swing to take the lead of the silver class. That is phenomenal from the Gavan Motorsport driver, and that could just be what he needs now to run away with this, unless he's under fuel to get himself track position, and then he's got to save fuel. But I have to wait and see. But meanwhile, whilst all this is playing out in the silver class, Gavan Gardener's in the pit lane, albeit you can't quite see the NXTGEN Racing pink Ferrari, but we can assure you it's there. Meanwhile, this is the man he's trying to beat on strategy, and Stephan Wessels, who makes his way on through Casio Triangle. McCluskey's fallen to 2.2 seconds back. And as Wessels comes down through the final quarter, here is Gavan Gardener, and well, there's Wessels in the rear of your picture in the long train of cars. Gardner comes out and takes the lead of this race with what is 22 minutes to go. Wessels is only at 3 seconds behind, but Gardner has jumped in on strategy. In fact, to put you in the frame of the picture, that pit stop for Gavan Gardener stationary time was 19.5 seconds. For Wessels, it was 34.5, so Gardner has just leapt up through the field by 15 seconds on strategy. So that goes to show just how hard Wessels has been pushing. Meanwhile, how much Gardner has just simply turned the wick down and tried to save fuel and save the car with this race. And now we are really in for a treat on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. Wessels will need to bring down a 2.7 second gap as it stands to Gardner, and then find a way on through. And if we know one thing about Gavan Gardener, he will not let that lead go without a huge fight, and Wessels will be only willing to oblige him. As meanwhile, we look from the battle for the gold lead back to the battle for P3 in the silver class, and Russell Fowler all over the back of Pennyworth once again on the exit of Casio, and as they make their way down towards turn, and when you see Pennyworth puts the car in the middle of the road, Fowler says, okay, I'll go to the middle and then the inside. There's going to be side by side there to break it into turn 1. They're going to go too wide on Apex, but as they come through, Pennyworth holds the outside. Fowler goes a little bit deep and just catches the car in time. I think they might have had to downshift the car one more gear, and that's what led to the rear kicking up and spinning round, but he's able to catch it in time, and Pennyworth defending around the outside through turns 1 and 2, where it's normally not heard of defending on the outside, but he's made it count. But Fowler now under pressure from Lee Horn, and David Kamano's behind this as well. So we've got a four-way fight for P3 in the silver class, as all four drivers here make the way for turn number 7, battling hard all the way through to the end, and well, nothing to separate them at this time. Meanwhile, to give you an update in the bronze class quickly, well, Sean Scudder has taken his second pit stop of the day. He is now affecting 1.5 minutes almost clear of Daniel Fritz, who is P2, albeit we do believe that Fritz needs to take another pit stop before this race is over, so therefore it would be argued that Elwyn Sykes is his main target right now, who is 1.5 minutes behind practically, albeit we have had Scudder have a mistake recently, so that gap has come down to a degree, but the point being that it is now Sean Scudder's race to lose. But as we do here, continue to look at the battle for P3 in the silver class. Fantastic battling between the four drivers. And in fact, speaking of drama here, ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to quite believe this. It was Sean Scudder's race to lose, and will commentator's curse or not, Sean Scudder is in the pit lane. He's had to be towed to the pit lane. Something has gone very, very wrong for Sean Scudder, and well, we'll try and find out what exactly has gone wrong very shortly. But meanwhile, as we look to Tom Bingham charge his way up to Casio, he is the battle for P3 in the silver class, still between Bennyworth, Fowler, Horn and Kamano, and well, they are all squabbling over the position right now. They are like a moth to a flame, for the simple reason that Bennyworth has got something they all want, and as they make the way on down towards turn number 1, going on to what them is lap number 50, well, you can see just how close Fowler is. Bennyworth pinning his car to the wall there to say to Fowler, if you want it that badly, you're going around the outside. And Fowler's only going to oblige you as they make the way to the braking zone, goes all in into turn 1, but goes a bit deep, natural part of running around the outside, and as they come through and up towards turn number 3, Bennyworth holds Fowler at bay once again, showing that he can defend on the outside and the inside into the opening 2 corners. But Horn there waiting to get into the mix as well. But whilst they make the way through the S's, we have a quick opportunity to take a look back at what happened to Sean Scudder, and here is a quick replay. Well, this was making it up through what was turn number 7, and loses the rear of the car there in getting the power down, and Scudder just hits the barrier, and that takes the rear suspension of the car out completely, and that explains what's happened to the CSA Blue driver from what was looking to be a dominant lead of the race. Well, now it means that the lead of the bronze class, it currently falls to Daniel Fritz, but given the fact we're to understand that Fritz may have another pit stop to take, well then Elwyn Sykes is only 3.9 seconds behind him, so we could have a little bit of a battle for the lead of the bronze class if Fritz is going to try and creep the car all the way to the finish line, to the checkered flag, albeit on a very, very long final stint, we can tell you, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out in practice. Meanwhile, Elwyn Sykes will be chasing him down. The CSA team will be cheering him on all the way, but whilst all this is playing out, in fact, we have had an instant for Daniel Fritz, and there he is, he's gone round, and what is turn at number 2, so that means the lead of the bronze class now falls to Elwyn Sykes, the CSA green driver from South Africa. Well, if he's been told he's leading, he's aware of it. I don't think he's going to quite believe it right now, in the fact that where many have fallen, he is still standing. It's not over yet. We're not going to sing his praises any further than that, but the key point being that for Elwyn Sykes right now, he could be of course to taking his first ever win in the GT3 League hosted by NXTGEN Racing, and if so, what a way to do it in Japan. But as he makes his way through Degner 2, the only thing he's going to be focused on right now is getting that car home. Meanwhile, looking to the very front of the field, here is the battle for the gold lead. It is Gavan Gardener who leads, and then behind that is Stephan Wessels, P2, who is closing very rapidly indeed. And as they make their way up towards Spoon Curve, Wessels is closing with haste. That last lap for Wessels, fastest lap of the race of 59.14 from the gold class driver. Absolutely smashing lap times in left, right and centre. And where it's understandable here, Wessels has given himself a car which has got all the fuel it needs to go to the end. It's also got the tyres it needs to go to the end, and he could push it to the maximum. Meanwhile, we reckon with Gavan Gardener, he may have underfueled the car intentionally to give himself track position and authority, but in the end it's given himself a 3-second advantage, which Wessels is only willing to cut into. And well, at the rate of closure he is making right now, given that Gardner on that previous lap set his personal best of 59.53, this lap as he comes across the line, it's a 59.96 for Gardner. For Wessels, meanwhile, it is going to be another 59.14, matching identically his previous lap. Wessels to pinpoint precision well, it means that within the next 3 laps we will have the battle for the lead well and truly on our screens. And well, with that in mind, can Wessels find a way through with what approximately will be 10 minutes of race left, or what equates to 5 laps to 6 laps depending on when the time falls. But meanwhile, as we look from one is there, the chase of the lead to back to the silver class and that battle for P3 in the silver class. Ben Bennyworth still keeping Russell Fowler at bay, and this will prove to be a very interesting test of Russell Fowler's ability, not just his ability to attack but also to defend, for the simple reason that as this goes on he will start to lose more and more tyre life on that BMW M4, running in the dirty air of Bennyworth's car. It means that he's fighting against that dirty air. It's going to scrub off life on the front tyres in particular, and that's where Lee Horn will start to come in. You see a little wobble there from Lee Horn as we ride on board with the Porsche 992 driver going on to the start finish straight. Horn, I think, starting to see that Fowler is falling back from Bennyworth. Perhaps he might be just simply backing the car off slightly to cool the front tyres and the front brakes down, but Horn now trying to make his attack, trying to put the pressure on him, trying to get Fowler to make a mistake. But in turn, Horn needs to be aware of the fact he pushes too hard. And he's got Kamano only a second behind. He'll be willing to take that P5 and silver off of him with both hands wide open. So therefore, it really is a rock and a hard place for both Fowler and Horn as they find themselves in the middle of the battle for P3 through the P6 sandwich. And well, when you are the filling here, you need to make a decision. Do you push and try to make the move and get yourself into some cleaner air, or do you back off, give yourself some breathing room, but in turn give your rider in front all the breathing room they need in order to feel comfortable with their car? As they head into Degner 2, again, you can see Horn really now starting to chip away at those apexes. And with that, the 36 driver, I think he's been told by the race engineers, now's the time you've got to go. Fowler is looking vulnerable. He does not look comfortable anymore. But as they make the way through the tail 11 hairpin, no moves up the inside there from Lee Horn, just having to wait and watch as they make the way up towards the next corner, going into Spoon very shortly by turn 12. Bennyworth this time only 2 tenths clear, so Bennyworth is being caught again by Fowler. So it may have been that Fowler now has just reset the car slightly, but goes a bit deep there to the first part of Spoon, so close to the dirty end, the same for Horn. Horn taking a very early apex there, gets a really good run off the corner, but this time in the double draft of the BMWs, it will mean it'll gain little by little, but it's not going to be enough, or is it? As he's thinking about it here, but he needs to time this very late indeed. Fowler covers the middle of the road, but Fowler looking for a move of his own as well to 130R. Bennyworth goes a bit deeper as well. Fowler tucks in behind. Horn can't find a way, and they stay as per the status quo. But on the brakes they go, and Horn now knows that if he can now Spoon, he might be able to go for it, but he's got to be so close in order to push it. The BMW 8 with straight line speed, and as they make their way towards the end of this lap, will nose to tail all the way from these three. Kamano just waiting in the wings, but falling away to a degree, and will right now, it's anybody's guess who's going to be on that final spot of the silver class podium when this is all said and done. Meanwhile, as they make the way into turns 1 and 2 to give you an update on the battle for the lead of the gold class. The gap between Gardner and Wessels now down to 1.2 seconds as they make the way towards the end of another lap. What is lap number 53? So our prediction in terms of when Wessels will be in attacking range seems to be accurate. About 10 minutes remain in the final 5 laps of this race. But as they make the way on through, what is here, the S's are driving live on screen. Well, Horn right now again close to Fowler, and it does look as though Fowler not comfortable with running close through the first 2 sectors versus Bennyworth, and that's where Bennyworth is able to give himself enough breathing room. If Bennyworth makes a mistake there, Fowler may just be able to keep himself in and get the move done. That is where Fowler is weak by comparison. We do see Horn making a bit of a mistake there at Degner 2, going a bit wide out to catch the car before it dropped off the exit curve, and if so, that could have caused the rear end of the car to kick around very rapidly. But as they make the way on through at turn at number 11, nose to tail they all go right now, nothing between them as they head up towards Spoon Curve. And as our drivers charge away on through it, and meanwhile we do look to Gianni Tahar, who here is now trying to make his way past Alfonso Marin. This is the overall position, only P18 overall. It is the gold driver trying to make the move on the silver class driver, and for Tahar this will be a little bit of compensation for what has been a difficult day of racing as he makes the move there. Alfonso Marin not really responding to it other than just staying on the racing line and expected it to come at some point. But Gianni Tahar just trying to take the positives from today, as meanwhile Lee Horn's had a poor run through what was Spoon Curve. David Camano takes the place there off of him. There's a bit more of a story that meets the eye, we reckon, but the Spaniard there takes P5 in the silver class, and Horn, I think with an uncharacteristic and unexpected error, just losing the place as a result. We take a look back at how that happened. Well, it must have been Horner had a poor run coming on through Spoon Curve, because we haven't seen anything from Horner to suggest otherwise, though instant. So probably just a poor run through the first part of Spoon. Kamano getting close up, and in the end, Horner just losing out. David Kamano takes P5 in the silver class. But as we return to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, we do look back to your overall and your gold leader of Gavan Gardener here. It is now 8 attempts between him and Stephan Wessels. That gap continues to drop at a staggering rate, and as they make their way on through, let's show you that time delta in the bottom right corner of your screen. And when you can see over the last couple of laps how that gap has come down based on the strategy, and then it has come down even further so. And in fact, as we do remove there what is the pit stop lap, you can see how it's come down from 2.8 seconds to what is 1 second or 8 tenths now as they go on to another lap. And well, as they do so, it could not be more tense. And indeed, I think down in the Next Gen Racing Pink Garage right now, you could cut the tension with a knife. It is that tight as they make the way in to turns 1 and 2 once more for the 55th time of asking. 10 minutes still on the clock, and Wessels now will face his final test of whether he can find a way to upset what is the potential surprise winner here of Gavan Gardener today by putting a surprise on the strategy. But as they make the way through the winding apexes of the S's still, Gardener doing everything he can to hold on, but Wessels is closing inch by inch, corner by corner, straight by straight, and now it's all coming down to those tiny little errors and all the pressure on his mind. Meanwhile, looking back to the battle for P3 in the silver class, that's Fowler on the inside, this time of what is there, Bennyworth, and it may just be the move that is made. As it does look as over there, Fowler finally finds a way past Bennyworth, and well, I think it was the run out of Spoon that set it all up, but we take a look back at how it all occurred, and here's the story. Well, it was a run out of Spoon which preceded this, a better run for Fowler on the inside, and in the end I think Bennyworth tried to cut it back, but you can see that he's gone too deep with the amount of speed he carried and therefore had to sit on the same line of Russell Fowler, and that is the move for P3 in the silver class by the Performance Link esports driver. But as they make the way on through on our live pictures now, and yep, definitely indeed, John O'Cook there in the YouTube chat saying the silver server strikes again, and Russell Fowler most definitely indeed doing so. But we look back to your battle for the over on the gold lead here, ladies and gentlemen, as it makes its way into 130R, and well, as Gardner heads out of the corner, we look back from the rear of the Ferrari 488 Evo for Next Gen Racing Pink, trying to hold off CSA Racing at Pink's Gavan, what is Stephan Wessels there, as the South African driver now well in slipstream distance. The Ferrari straight line speed will no longer keep it as safe as it once would, given the fact that he did start to leech a bit of speed off it, gain the toe, and as they make the way onto another lap, now onto what is lap number 56, 8 minutes and 10 seconds to go. We are due at least another 4 laps, if not 5 laps, including this one. And as they come through turns 1 and 2, right now Wessels has got time. He doesn't need to do this immediately. He can play with this a little bit. He can think about where Gardner is looking more and more exposed with each and every corner turned. But as the drivers wind their way up through the S's, you can see the Porsche able to close up rapidly so through the direction change. But now, once we start to get onto high-speed corners and much more aggressive, longer runs, this is where the Ferrari is able to stretch its legs, where it's able to start to gain a bit more, able to breathe some room and life into the mix. And whilst this is playing out, ladies and gentlemen, as we see that Garner missing his apex, meanwhile, Wessels riding over the apex curve there at Degner 1. I'm amazed that Porsche did not lose the rear slightly, but Wessels finding a way and keeping the car pointing in the straight line. And as they make the way through the hairpin, Garner goes a bit deep, but he will be able to bury the throttle here on a much more linear exit, and Wessels putting that pressure on. I think Garner right now really on the edge of adhesion with regards to the tyres. That Ferrari does not look as though it's able to break away, and getting traction on corner exit is starting to become a struggle. And again, we may see that here coming through the second part of Spoon as they come off of the left-hander. Well, the Ferrari there, in fact, getting the better exit out of the two of them, and it's the toe for Wessels which enables him to close up ever still. But as they power their way on through and up towards 130R, meanwhile, we have also got our eyes on the battle for the bronze lead between Elwin Sykes and Daniel Fritz. It's a 4.2 second gap, and it keeps oscillating between 3 seconds and 4 seconds. So Fritz is trying to come back at Sykes, but is it too late in the day to do so after his spin at turns 1 and 2? But meanwhile, staying here with the overall leaders, they make the way on to what for them now is lap number 57. Still time to go, and Wessels here in the chase. Something he absolutely revels in is chasing other cars down. He loves the racing, absolutely born and bred to enjoy it. And as he makes his way up towards turn 1 and 2, well, right now Wessels will be enjoying the hunt. He'll be, I think he would have been a bit surprised by how Gardener jumped him in the second pit stop, but still with the time remaining, I think that's only brought a smile to his face, knowing that we've got a race on here, and he's very eager to try and make it come his way. But meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, whilst this is continuing to play out on our screens in front of us, we do have some unfortunate news in the fact we have had a retirement, a confirmed retirement for Miguel Gutierrez Garcia, who now becomes what is our 9th retiree. We also had a retirement for Stephan Albanese, senior, also for what is Chris Shorter and Matt Shorter. They're still trying to get the car of Matt Shorter's repaired, but they're having issues with it. And we also had the retirement of Mark Sykes. We have lost 9 drivers today out of our 38 starters, but we still do have a grand total of 29 out of circuit, all close to finishing this race. As Wessels there, now looking for his first moves, gets gone, has got a bit defensive then to the airpin, so we're starting to see the initial signs of where he's teasing out the move. And what's interesting here is how exactly Wessels is positioning himself. You'll notice he got the better exit out the corner by comparison with Gardner. So I think what he's trying to do here is he's trying to upset Gardner's exits where the Ferrari should naturally be the stronger car of the two. He wants to be the closer driver, because if he closes up in the corners and then compromise Gardner's exits, then Gardner has not really got anything to stand on in terms of speed. But as they make the way up towards 130 off, right on board here with the caution on and 2 of Wessels, and again you can see just how much straight line speed that Ferrari brings to the table, and it's able to break away with the V8 engine as they make the way up towards the Castillo Triangle chicane. Onto the brakes they go. A little bit of traffic in front of him in the form of Jorge Santos, the priority at P7 in the bronze class. Just mind his own business. I think you'll see the blue flag shortly and decide just to steer clear of the race leaders as they make their way on to another lap. Time is running out, however, 6 minutes 15 seconds left, so we will get what will be, in fact, let me correct myself there, 4 minutes and 15 seconds left, so we will get 3 more laps, including the one we've gone on to, as we're to understand it. And the drivers make the way through what is their turns 1 and 2. I think Gardener here will be hoping there's only 2 laps left, given the pressure that's building, and Santos here has now been caught, and this is not a nice place for Gardener to catch a car that's a lap down, for the simple reason he's going to be boxed in here. But as they make the way up through the hill, well, Santos will know the blue flag's there, but where can Santos go? That's the question. And as they make the way into turn number 7, Gardener's just going to take his time, and what he'll be hoping here is that Wessels is not able to get close enough on corner exit as they make the way up towards Dagger 1, and Gardener trying to take a peek there, but Santos holding his line. To be fair, we're not running by F1 rules, we're running by the standard GT World Challenge blue flag rules, which is the faster car will make the move, but you just got to be predictable in the car that's a lap down and not fighting as they make the way into turns 10 and 11. You can see Wessels there immediately jumping at the opportunity to clear Santos, seeing that Gardener was going to come on through, and as they make the way on up, meanwhile we are hearing that Ben Bennyworth has had an incident off camera, and that has led to him dropping out of the top 5 of the silver class. Lee Horn is out to P5, Bennyworth drops down to what is P6 in the silver class after a move, I think, for P4 was made by David Camano only months ago. And in fact, we can give you a quick replay of what exactly happened, and here is the move for P4 in the silver class from David Camano. Bennyworth losing the rear of the car, and Camano having to take cat-like reflexes there to a whole new level, in fact dodging the Wayward Crest Autosport car. So that's very unfortunate for Ben Bennyworth, who ended up in the wall, and I think with that has had to be taken to the pit lane. In terms of the damage to the car, he's made it there under his own volition, but collapsed suspension on the car, you can definitely see that. But meanwhile, we return to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, as Ben Bennyworth leaves the pit lane down in P7. Tristan Engelstad does get another place here, so he moves up to P6 in the silver class. So in the end, the Mercedes driver being rewarded for his perseverance. But as our drivers make the way now onto what is the penultimate lap, we've got one more lap after this one. They go on to a 59th lap. We will get 60 in total, and Gardner still holds on. As they make the way on through, this is the closest battle on circuit, ladies and gentlemen. All other battles seem to have subsided, and we are going to stay with this all the way to the end. And Gardner has proven that despite the change of the traffic from Santos, he's been able to hold this position. But now he's got even more traffic in front of him. He's got Wesley Lewin in front of him, Ben Bennyworth, followed up by Wes. I do believe that's also Jordan Babois. So right now, Gardner is catching the traffic at the wrong time, and it only takes one bad call here to give Wessels every opportunity to find a way through. But as they make their way through Degner 1 and Degner 2, if Gardner pulls this off, this will Gardner is perhaps one of his proudest wins for the simple reason it is the most pressured win he could get. Meanwhile for Wessels here, the chase continues, and as they make their way up towards turn number 11 this time around, Wessels very far away, Gardner tucked in behind Lewin here, and as they make their way out the corner, well, I think Lewin will see the blue flags, he'll try and stay clear through turn number 12, he'll bring the car to the side, and Wessels will be hoping that Lewin also sees his fellow CSA car coming up behind, and he does. They make their way through the long right-hander. Now it's up to Spoon, and at this point I think Gardner can relax a little bit. And the fact that Ben Bennyworth is 1.5 seconds up the road, and relative pace would say that in fact Bennyworth is running a pace whereby Gardner should only catch up to him right towards the end of the final lap, so therefore in fact he may get a bit of a tow if he's able to catch him on the run on the back straight. But will he have time to hold on here as Wessels is inching closer and closer as they make their way in towards Spoon? Not quite, in fact, not into Spoon, into 130R, let's get it right, but as they make their way down to the braces over Casio, well, the key thing for Gardner is now, it's been the rehearsal, every month's led to this final lap, the checkered flag will wait him next time around, the white flag awaits him this time around, and we get one more lap of racing, ladies and gents. We're on to lap 60 of 60 here today at the Japanese circuit of Suzuka, and as they make their way down towards turn number 1, the gap is half a second, and look in the rear of the picture, that is Benjamin McCluskey who's been catching up with this battling, and the fact that Wessels has not been able to find his way through, and Gardner has seen the pace fall out of the car to a degree, and McCluskey right now is lapping in the low 59s, that's a 59.24 for McCluskey, so McCluskey is trying to get into the mix here right at the end, so the pace is shining through for McCluskey, but will he be able to get in there right when it's all said and done? We can see Baigua steering clear of which Gardner and Wessels, and now McCluskey will be hoping he can find a way through as well, but I think McCluskey has left this too late. He's one lap off of where he needs to be in terms of proximity to these guys, and as they make the way through Degner, well, Baigua's going to step aside there under blue flags, but the point is the damage is done for McCluskey. He hasn't got enough time, and as they come through Degner 2, Gardner right now seems to be managing this. It's 4 tenths, but he's got Bennyworth only 4 tenths in front of me. He'll want Bennyworth to steer clear as they come out of the hairpin, but what will happen here is the question. As Gardner powers his way on through, well, Bennyworth then brings the car to the left-hand side, much like what Lewin did only moments ago. It is going to be the top two make the way on through. Here comes McCluskey as well as they power the way on around. McCluskey back within 6 tenths of this, but I don't think he's there enough, as Wessels meanwhile is going to win now. You can see he's closing up at the braking into Spoon. Wessels I think has seen where he needs to go for this. He needs to get the exit on Spoon, curve up towards Casio. Gardner slides a little bit there on corner exit. Those rear tyres on the Ferrari are shot, but he's still able to get the speed down. And as McCluskey close up as well, it's 6 tenths that separate the top three as they make their way up towards 130R. Gardner leads. All he needs to do is nail this corner and one braking zone, and he will have the checker flag in his grasp. But as they make their way up to the braking zone for Casio, it's 3 tenths is the gap. McCluskey's very close. Wessels has to defend. Gardner's going to be allowed to run away with this. And as they make their way through the final corner, the checker flag awaits, and he's done it, ladies and gentlemen. He's left ahead on strategy, and he takes the checker flag. Gavan Gardener wins in Japan for Next Gen Racing ahead of Stephan Wessels, who finishes P2 behind for CSA Racing Pink, and it'll be Benjamin McCluskey who completes a run to complete the gold podium for Next Gen Racing, and then shortly it'll be Gaz Williams who comes home P4 in the gold class and overall for Next Gen Racing ahead of what will be Akram Tanoon, who will very shortly, 25 seconds behind, fight his way through to what will be a well-deserved P5 in the end when all things are considered here for the number 94 driver as he makes his way on down the hill to the start-finish line. Next up it will be Jamie Dory in the gold class, but we have to look to Elwin Sykes, ladies and gentlemen, who takes his maiden win in his GT3 League career in the bronze class today for CSA Green. And I don't think he's going to quite believe how it's happened, but that's why you've always got to be in it to win it all the way to the end. And then it will be Sergio Gonzalez in an absolutely brilliant piece of strategy who jumped his way into the leader of the silver class and never let go for KFM Motorsport Yellow. And that will be a maiden win for Gonzalez in his GT3 League career, and one that he'll be very proud of, there's no doubt about it. We then do have Tom Bingham, who comes home P2 in the silver class for Ponceling Esports, and he finishes just ahead of teammate Russell Fowler. It's a 2-3 for Ponceling Esports spots. Some huge points on the board for them today in the Teams Championship and in the silver class, respectively, for their drivers. We also got to give credit to P2 in the bronze class for Daniel Fritz of Whiskey Runners Racing. Missed out on the win by a spin, but he didn't need the extra pit stop in the end. And what could have been if he hadn't had the spin, he'll be thinking to himself immediately now. And very shortly, it'll be Sean Scudder, who after all the trials, tribulations, and instance, he will bring on home P3 in the bronze class. It wasn't the win he expected today, but he'll still take that P3, and no, it could have been far, far worse. It could have been a retirement in the pit lane, but still for CSA Blue, it's been a missed opportunity, but a podium still to his credit. We also do have a couple more drivers coming to the line, including Tristan Engelstad, who recovered to P6 in the silver class in the end and did well to finish what was 50 seconds behind the race winner in class of Gonzalez. And then we have Nestor Delafou, who finishes P7 there for Kevin Motorsport Yellow in the silver class and brings the car on home there after what has been a very challenging race for the number 34 driver. But meanwhile, as Wessels makes his way into the pit lane for CSA Pink, he'll have enjoyed the chase after Gavan Gardener for so long. But I think he'll be hoping if only I had one more lap and perhaps the traffic had fallen a bit more favourably. But still, credits where it's due to the number 27 driver. He is still definitely showing why he is the favourite in the Gold Championship. And meanwhile, Gavan Gardener here as he comes to a halt on the exit of 130R with Benjamin McCluskey. I don't know what fuel's left in that car. I think right now he's trying to do some donuts to the crowd. But in the end, there's no fuel left in that car. They're having to push it along, but still a brilliant drive for Gardner and nothing to take away. Whereas he's not been the fastest driver, he does manage to get a donut in the end coming out of what is their 130R. I think he has had some drivers decide to park up and let him have a little bit of a celebration, but the Ferrari 488 Evo driver definitely enjoying the moment, and I think he'll now know, and indeed that's confirmation, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to be the fastest driver out there in order to win in the endurance race rounds. You need to be consistent, have a strategy, and have nerves of steel when you've got the driver who's the fastest on the grid hunting you down lap after lap. But meanwhile, as we do look to Sergio Gonzalez as he makes his way around with the KFM Motorsport red, yellow and privateer crew. Well, the KFM Motorsport yellow driver today absolutely nailing it. A flawless drive from the number 23, and as he leads his teammates home, he'll be absolutely proud of what he's been able to achieve here today. And indeed, what a drive. I think that is one for the record books, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the strategy and how he managed to gain was effectively a 6-second swing over that single pit stop when it was completely unexpected. But still, that's why these races always do throw up interesting conundrums, and what a well-deserved win for the silver class driver. But as they all make their way into the pit lane, we now do look to the scenic view, and with that, let's take you through those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, starting with the overall category. And as we can see, overall, Gavan Gardener taking the win for NXTGEN Racing Pink there by just shy of 5 tenths of a second, I should say, ahead of CSA Racing Pink's Stephan Wessels at P2, and then Benjamin McCluskey rounding off the podium for NXTGEN Racing. The gap between what was Wessels and McCluskey in the end only 1/10, if that. And it goes to show, I think if McCluskey had one more lap, he would have really been considering an opportunity for the second place spot, but still it wasn't to come in the end. And then a further was 11 seconds behind Gaz Williams and NXTGEN Racing, finishing just off of the podium, but still he'll be pleased with the fact he was able to bring it home inside the top 5 after what was a very mixed race, particularly with that instant early on in the race. At Crimson Noon, recovering well to P5, the privateer in the number 94, 25 seconds off of the top 4. But still bringing the car on home comfortably with Jamie Dory P6 there for NXTGEN Racing, with the investment in the McLaren MP4 12C paying dividends early on in the race, but an unfortunate mistake after his first pit stop spoiling what could have been a potential podium opportunity. A further 16 seconds behind in P7, your silver class winner Sergio Gonzalez for KFM Motorsport Yellow, 9 seconds clear of Tom Bingham Performance Link Esports, who led home a 2-3 for the team ahead of Russell Fowler. And then P10 completed the top 10 overall at David Camano, the KFM Motorsport red driver, missing out on the silver podium, but still at the same time I think pleased with his efforts and knowing that he was the best of the rest outside of the podium spots in his class. Lee Horn at P12 there, best of the rest. We've had P11, I should say, best of the rest as we get our numbers right for NXTGEN Racing, completing a run to a top 5 finish in the silver class, and then focusing on our podium finishers in the bronze class in terms of where they finished overall. Well, firstly, we can see the top 13 were to finish on the lead lap, which concluded with Nesta Dilafou in P13 for KFM Motorsport Yellow, and then finishing a lap down, we started at Ben Bennyworth, and then Gianni Tahar, Matthew Addy, and Elwyn Sykes, P17. But more importantly for the CSA Green driver, his first win of his GT3 League career with NXTGEN Racing Series, and that being in the bronze class. What a brilliant drive from him, and then not putting a single foot wrong, and sometimes it's all about taking a slow and steady approach to the race. Alfonso Marin separates him up from Daniel Fritz, the Whiskey Runners Racing driver, second place runner-up in the bronze class, and I think regretting that spin so late on in the day and what could have been the win, or at least a close battle for the win between himself and Elwyn Sykes, but still the Australian will take that second place with pride. And then Victor Shaboro completing the top 20, had a Jack Barker, Paul Scott, and then Sean Scooter, the final driver to finish a lap down, and with it completing our bronze podium for CSA Blue. And what a difficult day today for Sean Scooter, after when we said he was leading by a comfortable margin, to end up in a nasty incident which completely spoiled that opportunity, but he did well to recover to P3, all things said and done for CSA Blue, and now some key points have been accrued. Jordan Baybar, the first of our drivers to finish 2 laps down in P24 ahead of Alex Roggenbach, who brought home his best result of the season today, P5 in the bronze class, and then Davide Favo and Jorge Santos completing all the drivers who finished under their own impetus. We do believe at least within 5 laps of the race, winner Jorge Santos being the only driver to finish what was at 3 laps down in the end. And I've just had it confirmed in my ear that John Meredith did finish the race under his own Stevie Fish, 10 laps down in the end for Meredith Racing. So good to see that despite all the difficulties, number 17 driver fighting through to the finish. And Wesley Lewin, our final finisher in this race, P29 there for CSA Pink, 11 laps down, but finishing on circuit under the checker flag. We had the retirees, Miguel Garcia, who finished P30 there, and the privateer will be classified as a finisher as he completed over half the race distance. And the same will apply for Stefan Albanese Senior, Matt Shorter, Mark Sykes, but still classified as non-finishers as they did not complete half the race distance. Will be Chris Shorter, Aaron Thompson, Jonathan Cook, Adam Dillman, and Bobby Thompson. Meaning that in the end, we did have a grand total of 9 retirees, 38 starters, 9 retirees, and 29 finishers. And then come on to the individual class classifications, and we can see here Gavan Gardener taking the win in the gold class by what was 4.5 tenths in the end, ahead of Stephan Wessels, with Benjamin McCluskey only a further 10th behind. A close finish between the three, and that's what we do love to see. And then Gaz Williams finishing a further 11 seconds behind, but ahead of Akram Zanoon by 25 seconds there to complete your top 5 in the gold class. Jamie Dory P6 in what was a difficult midpoint of the race, and therefore not able to convert what was an interesting change of car to a potential podium finish. With Gianni Tahar P7 for Quad Dash Racing, doing well to recover to P7 and finishing the leader of those who finished a lap down. But I know with plenty more points out there today, it just was not to be his day. Victor Shimura at P8 for KFM Motorsport Yellow, and a similar story. And then we did have our retirees of Miguel Garcia, Matt Shorter, who will both be classified as finishers, and they round off your gold top 10. And then Chris Shorter, Jonathan Cook, Adam Dillman, and Bobby Thompson will be classified as non-finishers there, P11 through to P14. Coming on to the silver class, we then do see Sergio Gonzalez taking the win for KFM Motorsport Yellow by 9.2 seconds in. And again, just to reiterate, what a masterclass of strategy from the number 23 driver in the end, making those pit stops count, and indeed in doing so, leaping ahead of Bingham, who seemed to have control over the race all the way through. But on that final pit stop, Gonzalez was able to swing the pit stop in his favour, and it definitely showed, with Bingham giving chase, but never able to close up the gap. And in fact, the gap finishing at 9.2 seconds in the end, with Fowler only a further 7 tenths behind, and making it a 2-3 Performance Link Esports. David Camano, P4 there for KFM Motorsport Red. He'll be pleased with the fact he was the best of the rest outside the podium places, and knowing that pace has continued to come through, with Lee Horn at P5 for NXTGEN Racing, then 30 seconds behind with Tristan Engelstad for Quad Dash Racing, 10 seconds clear of Nesta Delafou. Ben Bennyworth finishing a lap down in P8 for Crest Autosport, and was a difficult end to his race after fighting for so long in the battle for the podium. But it looked as though the car gave way, and with it for the Crest Autosport BMW M4 driver, his aspirations of finish inside the top 5 as the minimum gave way as well. Also finishing a lap down, Matthew Addy and Alfonso Marin, and Jack Barker best of SP11 there for Made for Race, and a bit of a quiet race after early damage picked up. And then NXTGEN Race's Paul Scott round off the 1 lap down finishers P12. DRS Esports' Stephan Albanese Senior will be classified as a finisher, finishing 18 laps down in P13. And our sole retiree in the silver class, who'll be classified as a non-finisher, Aaron Thompson there, the privateer, finishing at 43 laps down come the conclusion. We then come onto the bronze class, and here we can see in the bronze category, Elwin Sykes bringing home his first win for CSA Racing Green, the South African driver, by 6.8 seconds over Daniel Fritz. The Whiskey Runners racing driver, I think he then ran on fumes in the car, and the gap did open up significantly as time went on, but still nothing between the two of them. And where all the big names fell in the class today, they were the ones to take to the top steps of the podium, and will they'll be absolutely pleased with their achievements. Sean Scooter at P3 there for CSA Blue, and 9 that it was his race to win today, but still recovering to P3. That's no mean feat by any means, and therefore he'll be pleased with the recovery drive, with Jordan Babe-White recovering to P4, and the leader of the drivers who finished a lap down or more in the bronze class, ahead of Alex Rogenbach, who picks up his best result of the season at P5 in the bronze class. The privateer there enjoying a relatively quiet race, but still sometimes quiet is good, and Davide Favo P6 for CSA Blue, ahead of Jorge Santos, who finished 2 laps down in the end, and then finishing 9 laps down under his own steam, John Meredith for Meredith Racing, and Wesley Lewin a further lap down, P9 for CSA Pink, the last of the finishers ahead of the retirees. Mark Sykes P10 there for the 666 machine of NXTGEN Racing, finishing 22 laps down, and therefore completing over half the race distance, and will be classified as a finisher in P10, last but not least in the bronze class. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes all of our racing here today in Suzuka, and well, with that, that means it is now time for us to get ready for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And it has been an absolutely fantastic race today, so we've got plenty to talk about in the interviews, so don't go anywhere, because in about 10 to 15 minutes time we'll be back for the interviews, and you won't want to miss them. We'll see you shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And tonight we've got quite an eclectic mix in the fact we're firstly going to be hearing from our overall and gold winner in the form of Gavan Gardener from NXTGEN Racing Pink. And then we'll be hearing from our bronze class winner, Elwyn Sykes, on what should be quite an emotional first victory in his NXTGEN Racing GT3 League career for CSA Green. We'll then come on to the silver class driver, Tristan Engelstad for Quad Dash Racing, who did well to recover to P6 in the silver class, all things considered. We'll then read out some words from Kevin Motorsport Yellow's Sergio Gonzalez, who, whilst not a native English speaker, has put something together for me, which I'm going to read out live on air with regards to his win in the silver class, in what was a deserved win at that. Without further ado, joining me immediately in the interview room is none other than our overall winner today, Gavan Gardener. And as he does join me now, good evening to you, Gavan, and well, what a race. Over 2 hours, it came down to one pit stop to get you in front of Stephan Wessels, and in the end it was all about hanging on for dear life, but you managed to do it, and you must feel absolutely thrilled. Or is it exhausted, or is it an equal measure?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, it's a bit of a mix of all of them, really. Yeah, it's a bit of a knackering race. Like you say, 2 hours. It's a tricky track. Sort of keeping it on the grey stuff was a bit of an effort at times, but yeah, like you say, it sort of all worked out in the end for me a little bit.
Oh, indeed. And well, with it being such a long race, and yourself really having a reputation from what we've seen over the opening 2 rounds of being a very consistent driver, and also one that's able to manage lap times close to the front of the field, how were you feeling going into this race at Suzuka? Was it one that you felt as though could come to your advantage?
Not particularly. The Porsches in practice have been very, very quick, and there's a few other guys like I think Bobby, who joined Bobby Thompson, was doing laps in the Ferrari, but much quicker than I could manage. So sort of coming into this race, like after the practice yesterday, I wasn't feeling too confident. So sort of said to myself, I'm going to go in, try and not drive at 100%, sort of try and keep the tyres a little bit in check, save fuel if I can, and just kind of see where I kind of wash out towards the end of the race. I think part of my plan originally was to take tyres at every stop, but when it came to that second stop, I decided not to, just thinking if I can have a slightly shorter stop and come out ahead of Stephan and Benji, then I've got a much better chance of, holding position potentially. And yeah, in the end it worked out. I sort of managed to Mr. Magoo my way for a lot of the instants at the start of the race. I think a lot of the fast drivers, like I think Chris Shorter and Bobby, like I mentioned, had a few issues and sort of had to drop out. And then, when it came down to it, I just about had enough speed to stay ahead of Stephan.
Oh, indeed, and there was one major incident which really did define the opening stint of the race. I think you were a bit too far back to be involved in it, but you capitalised a lot on it. We did see a number of your classes drivers have an incident coming out of Casio Triangle where it was almost as if the seas parted and there was a big gap for you to jump through, and you went from what was, I believe, P10 in the class, suddenly up to P2 in the class. Was that a moment when you thought to yourself, you know what, we could be on for a potential podium here as a minimum, given the way the seas have cleared?
Yeah, that was quite a fun moment. Yeah, so like I say, I was P9 or P10, and then I think going into turn 1 I was P4. And then, like I say, there a few other drivers in front of the instance ended up in P2. Yeah, I sort of towards the end of the first stint, I think I can't remember if it was at the end of the first stint or a bit afterwards, but I was definitely in first then. I was sort of thinking to myself, this is a pretty good place to be. Yeah, it's like things that might have been swinging my way a bit. I think podium was definitely on my mind from that point. It was only sort of after I came out from the second stop that I was sort of thinking, actually, maybe it's P1 as well.
And just on that with regards to your strategy, did you change your strategy based on the circumstances of the race went on, or did you stick with your plan A? Just take us through it.
So plan A was going to be tyres at every stop, but part of my thinking was I'll look at what the tyres are, I'll see what they look like in the first pit stop. I know that the final pit stop, the last stint is only going to be sort of 25 minutes or so. I think after the first stop, I think my worst tyre was 57. I think when I came out, I think I was like 6 or 7 seconds behind Stephan, but I knew that he was probably going to have a longer stop because I think he stopped earlier. And I was thinking if I can not use the fronts up too much, when I sort of come into that final stop, I could probably cut off 6 or 7 seconds maybe, by not changing tyres. I think my maths is right. I think it was about a 14-second stop, and I think it's about 20 if you change tyres. So I was thinking if I do that, I'll definitely come out ahead, and then I just need to kind of manage it towards the end and hope that the speed of the Ferrari is enough to keep the Porsche behind. And it seemed to work out.
Indeed, it worked out in your favour with regards to taking track position come the end of the second stop. And just with regards to the Ferrari, it's a car that has a reputation for being very good on its fuel and its tyres if managed correctly, but at the same time it can eat those rear tyres very quickly. Just how were you balancing the car? Because we saw throughout the race your pace was a little bit off compared to, say, the likes of Wessels, Benjamin McCluskey and Gaz Williams, but you never seemed to have any moments where the pace fell away. It was almost as if they would lose their pace, but yours would just stay absolutely consistent.
Yeah, the Ferrari's a bit of a weird one, I think. I sort of had it on the BMW in past seasons, but it seems that it gets quicker as the fuel runs down, and that kind of balances out the tyre wear. And then I sort of found for the last stint, I think having the tyres warm when you come out of the pits, you can kind of make them last a little bit longer as well. So as long as that last stint's not too long, I didn't have to worry too much. But the Ferrari does seem to maintain its pace a little bit, and sort of the way I was trying to drive, I was particularly worried about sort of spinning in turn 1 or spoon corner, so I kind of wasn't putting too much into the brakes, and I think that might have saved the tyres a little bit as well, and just kind of helped keep the pace a bit more consistent maybe than a couple of other guys.
And on that, coming onto the final stint, you came out ahead by 3 seconds. The gap starts to cut down with 15 minutes to go. Time's wearing thin. Wessels is there with 4 laps remaining. Just what's going through your head at that point?
I was just having flashbacks to Fuji, and I was just trying to think of ways I could prevent that from happening and keep him behind. I think the main places I was worried about was the hairpin, and then maybe into spoon. I mean, it was mainly the hairpin. I think he was a little bit slower than I was through 130R, so I wasn't too worried about the chicane. I think turn 1 is kind of a single line. He didn't have enough pace to get an overlap, so I wasn't too worried there. So it was mainly, make sure I don't don't make any mistakes and get the entry to the hairpin right. And in the end, I think that Stephan had 27 incidents, so he was a little bit worried about that. I only had 8, and then when we reached the traffic, it just worked out just well enough for me that he didn't get anything to I don't know what I'm trying to say. He didn't get any bonuses from the lap traffic.
Oh, indeed, but I have to ask, when you came up behind the traffic, it's always one of those situations where as the lead car, you've got to try and carve your way through. Albeit traffic in this league has been quite compliant for the best part of time. Does your heart sink a little bit thinking, oh goodness, I've now got this and we've still got 2 laps to go?
Yeah. As soon as I'm looking in front and behind, I'm starting to get a little bit terrified. I don't know if you saw, I was leaning on the headlight flashy button for probably the last 10 minutes whenever I came up behind anyone. I was sort of just hoping that they'd get out of my way when it was safe, and hopefully drop him behind me and get in Stephan's way. But yeah, no, the traffic was all great tonight. I didn't have any issues with anyone. So yeah, no, it was good racing. And yeah, the traffic, as I just played out just where I needed it to, really.
Indeed, and it was a thrilling conclusion to what was a thrilling race over 2 hours between yourself, Stephan Wessels and Benjamin McCluskey getting involved right at the finish. And speaking of the finish, when you came out of the final corner of Casio Triangle for the 60th and final time today, what was going through your mind as you crossed the finish line?
Oh, it was relief. I was glad that I sort of managed to hold on. Like I said, after Fuji last time, which was obviously a really, really fun race, but to just pitch that first place by Stephan, I was thinking, I'd like to leave Japan with a win, especially having led sort of so many laps in that last stint. I was just very glad, and it's always nice to win a race, so very happy.
Oh, indeed, and the happiness does shine through in your voice. And with this win, it brings you a little bit closer to the top of the gold class table. Wessels still leading, but the gap is coming down. And we move towards the end of the first half of the season at 2 weeks from now with a visit to Road America. How are you feeling for the picturesque countryside circuit?
I've never got on with Road America. It's one of my least favourite tracks. So yeah, I'm happy to go in with a decent points haul from this race, but I've not got any expectations for that one. I think if I could have a fun race and, you know, not do anything stupid, I'll be happy. I know that a lot of people do enjoy it. I do have good races there. It's just, it's not my favourite track. But yeah, no, we'll see how it goes.
Oh, indeed. We wish you all the best for your preparations for Road America. But just before we do let you go, Gavan, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, I guess just thanks to everyone at NXTGEN for arranging this. You know, thanks to Gaza and Jamie for, you know, being my teammates and sorting things out. Yeah, thanks to all the competitors, I guess, for all really fun racing. And as always, thanks to you for the broadcasts. As I say, they really make these leagues what they are. So just so happy to have you commentating and providing the broadcast every week. So yeah, cheers.
Well, Gavan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview. And in the words of Stephan Wessels himself in the YouTube chat, great race, Gavan. Goes to show just how you've captivated the hearts of many a spectator and even your rivals on the circuit today. We hope your preparations for Road America do go well, apart from the fact it's not been a circuit, in your own words, where you've had too much great success at. But you never know, time could tell 2 weeks from now. But until then, enjoy the win. Congratulations once again and have a fantastic evening.
Cheers, thank you. Cheers, Paul.
So hearing there from Gavan Gardener in the gold class for NXTGEN Racing Pink, your winner for today overall and in the class, and what a way to go about it, and very interesting to hear his perspective on how the race evolved, and particularly how the reality of potentially chasing the win only really came to light towards the end of the second stint. His focus initially being more on racing the drivers around, and when he managed to carve his way through, the incident occurred early in the race which took out a good number of the leading gold class drivers, moving up inside the top 5. That's when the reality of a potential podium kicked in. But it was only on that second stint when he could see the tyre life was swinging his way, and the fact he didn't need to take on those extra tyres in the second pit stop, that's when he was able to go on the charge to try and bring on home the victory versus Stephan Wessels. Now, to be fair, a brilliant battle between the two of them. And in other circumstances, it could have gone another way between 1 or 2 laps. But still, at the same time, talking a little bit about the traffic situation there as well. And now the traffic was quite obliging, even though it was one of those situations whereby when he initially saw how much traffic he'd have to negotiate, well, could it be a potential scenario where he would lose out, whereas his rival would gain coming up behind? But in the end, it was a rather neutralised situation. And with that, plus defensive nuance and managing the pace all the way through, Gavan Gardener was able to take the victory, and, well, take a victory that he missed out at Fuji versus his main rival. And between the two of them now, I think it's only going to be somewhere in the region of what will be about now 9 points between Stephan Wessels and Gavan Gardener, and we have definitely got a gold championship battle on our hands. But now coming on to our second interview for this evening, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be hearing from Elwyn Sykes. And, well, what a day it has been for Elwyn Sykes, in the fact that this will be his first win in his career in the NXTGEN Racing GT3 League. And with it, what an occasion to do so, given the fact that where others fell left, right and centre, he did not. And as he gets ready to join me in the interview room, we'll get to hear his perspective on definitely what has been an evening to remember. And in fact, as the bronze class driver now does join me in the interview room, we say hello and welcome to Elwyn Sykes. Elwyn, there's probably 100 different words that are going through your head right now, but what if I was to say to you, you've just won the 2-hour endurance race at Suzuka in Season 4 of the NXTGEN Racing GT3 League. How does that sound?
Yeah, it came to me as a surprise. I had no idea I actually won. I thought it was like maybe fighting for 4th or maybe a podium position. So yeah, but over the moon that I finally have made some places and some positions, and through the other seasons finally have got to the point where I've actually got a podium. I'm very excited. It's good. It's great. And I must say, boa noite from the SAFA in Portugal to you and the rest of the NXTGEN team. Finally, I get to take the limelight off of my teammate Stephan Wessels.
Oh, indeed. He had, to be fair, his own unique race, but for yourself, and like you say, for the most part, I think you were battling for a potential top 5. Earlier in the race, we did see quite a few incidents, and particularly the race start for the bronze drivers was no exception. Through the opening couple of corners, it looked as though quite a few drivers were scattered about, but you were able to steer clear of the danger. Just take us through how it all started.
Oh, I have no idea. I suppose it's like most of the starts. You just kind of. I'm a very cautious driver, maybe sometimes too cautious. So yeah, I just took it easy and somehow just managed to get through a lot of the mess, and just put my head down and carried on. It's one thing practicing and getting your times down, but when it comes to the real race pace, I tend to slow down a bit to try avoid touching the grass and losing time and that. And so, yeah, like I can say tonight it just worked in my favor.
Oh, most definitely. And once the initial theatrics were over and everyone started to settle down, it seemed as though, for the most part, it was a quiet race for you, and everybody else was having a bit more of the exciting race. But quiet's not a bad thing. Focusing on your strategy a little bit, did you tweak your strategy at any point, or did you stick with what your plan A was?
My plan was just to race it out, keep it clean, and pit when I get told to pit from crew chief, saying you're running out of fuel, pit and get out and carry on. It was a bit of an awkward half of the session because I dropped a liter of water on my lap as I was trying to exit the pit. So out of the entire race, yeah, I think getting through that was probably the most challenging.
Oh, goodness me, I can only imagine. Well, to be fair, it must have been a bit damp, but at the same time, it didn't dampen your aspirations. Speaking of which, going into the second stint, we saw Shun Scooter leading for quite some time, only to be involved in a very nasty incident, which then saw yourself and Daniel Fritz promoted to second and first, respectively. At that point, was there any indication that you might be on course for your first podium?
Nothing. I heard. I didn't hear. I heard something because I've got the stream playing in the background, and I thought I had heard something, but I didn't hear Sean say that he had come off or anything. I think he had kept quiet at that stage, and at that point I really had no idea that I was sitting in that position. So yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Well, indeed, that's fair. And as time went on, we did see a number of your rivals having moments at different corners around Suzuka. Turns 1 and 2, plus also 130R, catching out many. For yourself in the BMW M4, it seems to be a car that you go very well in. How were you able to manage this car and avoid suffering the same fate as others? Because this circuit, it can catch you out on any corner.
I think it's part of the reason why I went for the BMW. I think the first season I took the McLaren, and I realized very quickly that it definitely wasn't the car. As much as I love it, it wasn't the car for me. And I found in the last prototype season in that BMW, I managed to keep the consistency going. So for me, it's just a good all-rounder, and yeah, not as tricky. I'm not sending it like the aliens and the fast cars. I'm just taking it easy and trying to avoid causing any problems with the faster cars coming up behind me or around me. So yeah, it's just an easy car for me. So
and that's a fair approach. To be fair, what comes easy to you, and to be fair, you do make it look very smooth and easy when you're driving out there. And coming back to that, when we did see Daniel Fritz have his spin at turns 1 and 2, you took the place off of him. And at that point, you were now into the lead of the class with approximately 20 minutes to go. I have to ask, when did the penny actually drop you were leading?
Once the race had finished. I think I was doing the final, just finishing up, planning to come to the pit, and Davide Favo messaged on our group chat and said, "Oh, I think, not to jump the gun, but I think you might have come first." And I said, "I don't believe you." So it was really right at the end that it came to me.
Oh, goodness me. And, well, I can only imagine the thoughts that were going through your head once you'd had that information and it was confirmed. And what a way to do it, to be fair. And with that in mind, obviously, your target's been for some time to achieve a podium. So to go one step above that in your first time getting on the podium, it must feel special.
Oh, for sure. You know, especially on this track. Yeah, I think to keep the focus in on that last, for me, on that last 20, 30 minutes, you find yourself like trying to keep it going and not making those silly mistakes because, you know, at a stage that I'd have Daniel catching me, and it was concerning, and I wasn't sure if I would have enough time to keep ahead of him. You know, and also Jordan Bebo, I wasn't sure where he was sitting at because he's really fast. I know he had come off during that stage, but I've seen guys falling off and they're still coming past me. You know, so I just had to keep my head down and just keep on, you know, making sure that the attention is there and not making those small little errors.
Well, it definitely paid in the end because keeping that consistency and the attention meant that come the end of the 2 hours, the checker flag wave, and you take the win. And with that momentum on your side, 2 weeks from now, we make our way to Road America. How are you feeling for a visit to the United States?
Oh, well, number one, it's a track I haven't been on yet. I'm going to have to really call in the teammates to come help me. Do some track guides, give me some advice, and I think like this time around I did spend quite a bit of time practicing and getting some track time, some seat time on Suzuka, and I think that's all that it boils down to. You know, it's just finding that time to practice, and that's what I'll have to do with the next round, and with the help of the teammates, hopefully I can just keep it consistent again and see where I'll end up.
Well, we do look forward to seeing how you get on 2 weeks from now at the Wisconsin circuit. But just before we do let you go, Elwin, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, now that I'm here, I definitely like to big shout out to my brother from another mother, Mark Sykes. Yeah, and the team, really, you guys have been fantastic. It's a league I keep on coming back to. I keep on encouraging my other mates to come join us. The shout out definitely to my wife and my 2 little girls that know when it comes to the 2-3 nights before I'm disappearing after getting them sorted out and rushing to the rig and spending a lot of time on it. So big shout out to them for their patience and letting Dad and hubby have a bit of fun, you know, with the boys. And yeah, definitely to my teammates, because it's, you know, it's always a good laugh being on the track with them and just having a good time.
Well, Elwin, it's an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room this evening. And let me say it once again, you've done it in style to bring home your first podium and with it your first win in your GT3 League career at NXTGEN Racing. What a way to do it. And well, can you carry on that momentum 2 weeks from now? I think we'd all love to see it, and everybody tuning in would love to see it at Road America. But until then, enjoy it, have a fantastic evening, and we'll see you out of circuit in the near future.
Muito obrigado. Ciao, Paul. Thanks for all your efforts.
All the best.
Take it. Cheers.
So hearing there from Elwin Sykes, and well, would you believe it, from the CSA Green driver, he didn't know he'd taken the win until after he got told by one of his teammates after the checker flag had been taken. But that's the way to do it. Head down, just focusing on not making any mistakes. And we did see a couple of minor off tracks in the background there whilst we were speaking to Elwin, but still nothing catastrophic, nothing which would upset the balance of the BMW M4 behind his hands, and therefore just able to focus on one thing thing and one thing only, getting the car to the checkered flag. And along the way, bad luck, misfortune and errors found every other driver in the class. And sometimes that's the way it all happens. You don't expect it. You just simply keep the car down, and come the end of it, you are the victor. And for Elwin, well, he's always wanted to achieve a podium. He's gone one step further than that today. He's achieved his first podium, and he's made sure he's on the top step of said podium. And, well, we definitely look forward to seeing plenty more for the CSA Green driving the bronze class as the season goes on. But like they say, miracles do happen. And, well, today, he's definitely achieved something special. And it's not just down to Lady Luck, but it's also because he's put the car there and he's put it on the top step. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to our third interview of the evening. And without further ado, we'll very shortly be hearing from Tristan Engelstad. And it's been a different set of fortunes for Tristan Engelstad compared to our previous two interviewees, with a race which has proved to be highly challenging, but at the same time, one where he's had to battle against adversity and find his way back through the order. And as he gets ready to join me now, let's hear his story as he does join me. Now we say hello to Tristan Engelstad. And Tristan, a difficult race for you today. P6 in the silver class, P12 overall. One where you had to bounce back multiple times after incidents, but all in all, looked as though you gave it your best out there and you enjoyed it as much as you could.
Yeah, of course. I try to fight as much as I can and get as high positions as I possibly am able to put myself in, and yeah, trying to stay alive for the most parts. And in sprint and featured and endurance, where you have to have different types of mindsets, it's sometimes more difficult for me to set my mind into a new mindset and complete the race fully without any incident. So yeah.
Now, going into tonight, you're third place in the championship, 3 points separating yourself from championship leader Russell Fowler and Sergio Gonzalez Martin, only 2 points ahead of you. So a lot of pressure residing on tonight for our first endurance race round of the season. Going into this, were there any expectations that you had, or was there a particular approach you wanted to take?
Oh yeah, of course. I had a lot of pressure. I was very nervous for the race, and my goal was to actually get P1, but I was stressing too much in the first 10 minutes, and what I call reverse snap oversteer, which is when you kind of overcorrect the car and just reverse like a snap over. So it's a bit weird, but yeah, and I accidentally did that and went to the wall, and then I just thought to survival mode and try to get as like a high position as I possibly could. I was trying to push as hard, but I wasn't trying to crash, so yeah, a lot of stress and a lot of fighting and sweat.
Oh, most definitely. And to be fair, when you're racing in a car which is as bold and brash as the Mercedes AMG Evo with its massive V8 engine, you've also got to tame the beast at your fingertips there. And it looked as though, for the most part, the Mercedes was not actually that bad at Suzuka.
Oh no, yeah, but it is sometimes it just randomly does its own things and just becomes the beast it wants to be. And I always try to keep it under control, but it's sometimes hard, and most of the time it just happens randomly when it's trying to like spin out and stuff. So you really have to be on your fingertips to drive the car, but it's fast on the straights, and yeah.
Oh, most definitely. One where you've got to dance with the devil. And coming back to your race, so after the early incident, which we did see, we then saw you start to embark on quite the recovery drive, which saw you make three pit stops when all was said and done. 1 for repairs and then 2 on strategy. Given the fact you'd had the incident, did you change your strategy at all in order to try and extend your stints, or just prevent yourself having to make an extra pit stop?
Oh yeah, I changed my strategy. So in the end, I went for a earlier pit stop so I could push for a longer stint, and I guess it kind of worked because I gained some positions in the end. I was pushing a lot. I got very consistent times, and I was just trying to keep my head down. So yeah, and then yeah, and of course my teammate was helping a lot because we were chit-chatting and we were talking and was asking him some questions because my crew chief stopped working. So that was a bit frustrating. So yeah.
Unfortunate, but at the same time, we saw you pushing very hard, and at one point, albeit on an offset strategy, running P2 close behind Tom Bingham. And with the pace you were delivering, I believe you were able to achieve the fastest lap of the silver class, so you will get the bonus points for that. Just take us through pushing hard at Suzuka in the Mercedes. It's a bit of an on-edge situation, is it not, given the fact that you're having to really drive on the limit, knowing that you're trying to make up for lost time?
Yeah, it's Suzuka with the Mercedes is like driving on ice. It's close to impossible when learning it, but when you get comfortable and drive a lot of laps, then you can drive faster and you get more comfortable. But driving with a lot of rubber on the track and going like wide, it becomes very slippery, and you try to mostly just stay alive with the Mercedes. And pushing as hard as I didn't really think about too much what just happened in the beginning. I was just trying to drive, and I didn't even know what people was in front of me, so I was just passing people over and over and again. So I was just like, okay, so maybe I'm gaining some positions, or I'm just passing bronze people.
Well, indeed, I believe he might have had one of the highest number of overtakes that we saw all the way through today, constantly pushing from start to finish. And whilst in the end it may have only been a P6 finish in class, it's valuable points on the board as this championship in the silver class really starts to build. Speaking of which, 2 weeks from now, we make our way to Road America for round 4, a sprint and feature pair. How are you feeling for them?
Not tested the track and have never driven on it, and to be honest, I've never driven on any of these tracks we're driving on except Sebring and Nürburgring. So Road America will be pretty special, and I don't actually have that much practice time because I'm going away now for 1 week. Then, so yeah, we'll have to practice a lot now the upcoming days, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah.
Well, goodness me, quite the challenge ahead of you, but still, I'm sure you'll rise to it. Just before we do let you go, Tristan, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a special thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, would like to shout out you, of course, because you're an amazing commentator, and of course my teammate that helped me during the race. I asked him a lot of questions because my crew chief stopped working. So yeah.
Well, Tristan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. Commiserations for today. It didn't quite go your way, but still a great recovery drive to P6 in class all the same. We look forward to seeing plenty more of you at Road America 2 weeks from now. But until then, have a fantastic holiday, enjoy the break, and we'll see you on track in the near future.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
So hearing there from Tristan Engelstad, our silver class driver today from Quad Dash Racing, where things just did not go to plan in the early stages. But like you said there, talking about driving the Mercedes around this circuit, having to really wrangle the beast, and it's like driving on ice in the end, and particularly when you get close to that rubber that's accumulating on the side of the circuit, it can very easily lead to the car sliding off the circuit. But all in all, balancing things out and having to adapt his strategy in order to overcome the early pit stop, which saw him have to take the repair work on the car. It's a fair achievement to finish P6 and P12 overall, in the fact that whilst he may not have gained the points that his main rivals Russell Fowler and also Sergio Gonzalez will have gained, at the same time he hasn't lost too much ground, and therefore this championship is still well and wide open. What's very interesting to hear there, though, is the fact that his relative experience on most of the circuits in this season of the league, he's only had experience at a couple of them, and with the limited practice time available, it may be fighting on the back foot for Tristan Engelstad 2 weeks from now at Road America. But all the same, he's going to give it everything he can. I'm sure he will be bouncing back in due course, much like he did today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our third interview of this evening. And now we come on to our final interviewee, and in particular to Sergio Gonzalez, the silver class driver today, who took the win in absolutely strategic style from KFM Motorsport Yellow. And whilst he won't be joining me in the interview room due to the fact that he does not speak English fluently, and therefore it'd be perhaps a little bit difficult. He has given me some pros which he'd like me to read out, so as we do get ready just to read that out, it is to say that definitely one of the drives of the season from Gonzalez, and really surprising us here in the commentary booth, and I think surprising a good number of people, including what we can see there in the YouTube chat performance link, saying how did Gonzalez gain 7 seconds on the pit, what a strategy. And well, to put it in the words of Gonzalez himself, he wanted me to say a few words for him. He'd like to thank his team, KFM, who have led me to victory, as well as congratulations to all my rivals who have been tough through today. It's been a very hard race physically, and I think that keeping above fatigue has been key. Thanks to the championship in general, and see you at Road America to see if we can give war again, i.e. we can take the battle to the circuit and pull off another win, I suspect. And he says greetings and congratulations to all. So therefore, some quick words from Sergio Gonzalez, but really to encapsulate his race today. Throughout battling with Tom Bingham, Russell Fowler and David Camano, and we did see in the early stages where it really was Bingham running away with proceedings and Bennyworth also being right in the thick of it, we should say. Meanwhile, Gonzalez and also Camano sitting back and observing, and I do wonder whether as part of all that, Gonzalez was really running on an alternate strategy which was very fuel saving based and tyre saving based, much like what we saw from Benjamin McCluskey in the gold class, where it all came alive in the final stint for McCluskey. Whereas from Gonzalez, I think the transition from stint 2 to stint 3 was really the turning point where we did see him absolutely deliver with that final pit stop, and that's where he made the jump and was able to maintain his advantage and not extend it. But still, he's really keen to wage on with the championship battle, and this result will put him right up there towards the very top of the standings, albeit I think he might actually be on level points with what is now Russell Fowler. So it's going to be interesting to see how that rivalry goes on in the Silver Class Championship, but either way, nobody can take away from a fantastic drive from the KFM Motorsport yellow driver, and thank you to him for sending me over some words which I'm more than happy to read out as part of the interview. But that concludes our interviews for today, ladies and gentlemen. You've just heard the words of Sergio Gonzalez read out to you live on air for KFM Motorsport Yellow, our silver class winner for today. And previously you heard from our gold class winner and overall winner, Gavan Gardener for NXTGEN Racing Pink, Elwin Sykes, our bronze winner for CSA Green, and we also recently heard from Tristan Engelstad, the silver class driver, finished P6 in the class today for Quad Dash Racing, and really defining what it means to deliver a recovery drive in difficult conditions at the Suzuka circuit. Congratulations to all 4 of our drivers for their performances, and we look forward to seeing plenty more from them in 2 weeks' time in our next round of racing. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the NXTGEN Racing community, perhaps you're sat there right now thinking that you want to be on the grid for a future season, or perhaps even join us mid-season in this current rendition of the GT3 League. Well, to find out all about that and how you can sign up and even more, we firstly recommend you do head to our official website, and that's at www.nextgenracing.co.uk. And as our website appears on screen in front of you, it is the home of clean and fair sim racing for all, where we at NXTGEN Racing have been hosting leagues for over 16.5 years. We started on a combination of PC and console, and we've charged on and are fully committed to focusing on PC-based series, but we continue to go from strength to strength, and we'd love to have you join us on the grid, or at least be part of the community, and indeed all of us together can make sim racing what it's meant to be, which is a fun and intense racing atmosphere for all involved. But alternatively, if you don't want to go to our website necessarily, you can also follow us on Facebook group, and indeed that's the best place to go for our social media, and that may be found at www.facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing. We can find out all the trials and tribulations of the NextGen Racing crew, the staff and admin, and also you can stay up to date with what we do in the real world of motorsport just as much as we do on the simulator, with a good number of our staff being part of track marshalling teams and even some of us being real world motorsporting race drivers. But now, ladies and gentlemen, attention turns to 2 weeks' time, with round number 4 marking the conclusion of the first half of the season, and on Wednesday the 9th of August 2023 we see round 4 take place at Road America. Imagine the setting. It's the state of Wisconsin, it's the picturesque Elkhart Lake circuit, and with its long straights, sweeping corners and battles aplenty to be unfolded, we're going to see potential favourites in the championship take a stand come the end of the first half of the season. But the question is, who will it be? In the gold class, Stephan Wessels seems to be the man who is running away with proceedings, but Gavan Gardener struck back a blow today. In the silver class, it is going to be Sergio Gonzalez and Russell Fowler battling for the right to be the leader going into the midway point, and in the bronze class, where it's been a wobble or two from Sean Scudder, quarter, but can he continue to recover and find his way through to the lead, or will we see the likes of Elwin Sykes, Daniel Fritz and company start to claw their way into the championship crown? All that and more we'll find out then, but until then, we've been Next Gen Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain and Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.